Chapter 194. The third prince opened the door and glanced outside. The third prince's face became very interesting. His eyes bulged out and his mouth was slightly open, as if he had eaten a fish that was stuck in his throat. He stuttered for a long time without saying a word. Bang! The third prince used all his strength to slam the door shut. Then, he held the door and lowered his head, large beads of sweat dripping down his forehead. What's wrong? Because the third prince only opened the door a crack, Bane did not see the situation outside and asked curiously. There's someone outside, Jilin said. What's wrong? The sword saint asked. It's nothing, the third prince said. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed. The sword saint said. He believed that the third prince would understand his deeper meaning. As if to prove the sword saint's words, a voice came from outside the door as soon as the sword saint finished speaking. Third prince, the door is already open. Why close it again? The sword saint raised his eyebrows. It was Ying Yi's voice. Uncle, what did my mother tell you before she died? The third prince suddenly asked. The sword saint was also stunned. He did not expect the third prince to ask about this at such a critical moment. If he were to talk about it in detail, it would be very long. But the current situation was obviously not suitable for a long talk. He could only talk about it slowly. Your mother told me to take good care of you. She hoped that you could grow up without worries. She also told me that the royal family is the purest place in the world. It is not a place to stay for long. If it was possible, she wanted me to take you away. The sword saint tried to be as brief as possible. Then why didn't you listen to her? The third prince asked. He even sounded like he was about to cry. Bane panicked. He wanted to go forward, but was stopped by Jilin. He could not take a step forward. Because I'm her brother. I can disobey her, Lord Sword Saint said in a matter-of-fact manner. His words were clearly unreasonable, but they were very reasonable. Because I hope that you can have your own life instead of following someone else's plan and living in someone else's shadow forever. That's not the style of the Guy family. No matter whose shadow it is, even if it's your father's, even if it's your mother's, even if it's me. Isn't this scene your and Mr. Ouyang's choice? No. Think about it carefully. This is your own choice. It always has been. The third prince was stunned. After a moment of silence, he raised his head and looked at the sword saint. It seems that I've taken more detours. Everyone knows how to take detours. This is necessary, sword saint said. Uncle, have you ever been there? I didn't. The third prince took a deep breath and straightened his back. This was probably the first time in more than 10 years that the third prince was able to straighten his back like this. It was as if he could support both heaven and earth. The third prince opened the door again and walked out with his head held high. In front of him, the street was filled with the Western Garrison Army in neat rows. The Empire's strongest border army. 22 huge golden warships were floating in the sky. This was the symbol of the Middle Empire's strength. Just by hovering in the air, they emitted a soul-stirring pressure. 2 of the larger warships flew up into the sky like city towers. The smaller one was as big as 2 or 3 Spring Breeze pavilions combined. The big warship's bow was carved with a dragon's head. It was extremely ferocious. The small warship's bow was carved with a war elephant. Just by looking at those warships, the third prince felt as if he would be smashed into meat paste at any moment. A strong sense of pressure hit him in the face. Kacha! Kacha! Sonorous and powerful footsteps sounded. The Empire's Western Marshal Qinlan walked to the front of the army. The soldiers behind her used their spears to hit their shields 3 times. They wanted to strengthen their marshal's momentum. Ying Yi appeared out of nowhere and stood beside Qinlan. Then, Qinlan and Ying Yi cupped their hands and bowed to the third young master. Empire's Western Marshal, Qinlan, greets the third prince. Shadow Guard's commander, Ying Yi, greets the third prince. The third young master looked at the 2 people who were bowing their heads to him. He wondered if they were trying to be courteous before resorting to force, or resorting to force before being courteous. The third young master blinked. He originally wanted to exchange a few pleasantries with them, but after thinking about it, he decided against it. I didn't expect him to think so highly of me. I'm the Empire's Marshal, a legend. To be honest, I'm a little scared. The third prince must be joking. The third prince was able to use all the princes for his own purposes. In an instant, he caused a commotion in the capital. The most valuable thing is that he didn't hurt any innocent people. This method, even among the princes of the past, can be considered the best. Yi said, if that's the case, why don't you persuade Li Zheng to directly pass the throne to you? That way, we won't have to fight to the death. Sword Saint walked out of the courtyard. Lord Sword Saint, teacher, there's no point in saying more. Lord Sword Saint, please consider it. Let the third prince surrender. I and 2 dragon-level warships can stop you. The remaining elephant-level warships are enough to wipe out the third prince's forces. Yi said, I don't think so. Sword Saint laughed. I can't really let my nephew bring a bunch of rabble to rebel against his father, can I? We know that Lord Sword Sage must have come prepared. Perhaps he has moved the entire Sword Mountain here. But look at the elite soldiers behind me. Do we really have to fight until both sides suffer? Both sides to suffer? You might have misunderstood. Although the disciples of Sword Mountain are here, each and every one of them is precious. We can't fight to the death with you. Oh, if the disciples of Sword Mountain don't come, does Lord Sword Saint have other helpers in mind? Sigh. Sword Saint lowered his head and sighed. At this moment, Qi Lin leisurely walked out of the courtyard and glanced at the golden warship in the sky. He had long been unhappy with these wingless things that dare to fly in the sky. What are you doing? This time, it was Bane's turn to grab Jilin. Get them down. Looking at those houses flying in the sky makes me angry. Bane narrowed his eyes and glanced at those city-like battleships. He felt that if those battleships fell, even if they couldn't destroy a small part of the capital, they should be able to kill him and his people. Wait a moment. Bane analyzed the situation and wanted to stop Jilin. But how could Jilin be stopped by him? Jilin's eyes shone with golden light. Dragon Domain, Sky Restriction. Bane looked at those warships in horror. He wanted to see where they came from so he could decide which direction to run. Bane was stunned. He didn't run because those warships didn't move at all. Not to mention falling. They didn't even sway. Bane glanced at Qi Lin as he thought to himself, this is a little awkward. Qi Lin was so angry that his eyes were about to burst into flames. How much more would these puny creatures trample on the rules of this world? And he didn't pay much attention to Jilin when he came out. He thought that he was just an ordinary human until Jilin's eyes lit up. Only then did Yi take a serious look at this young man. He had seen Qi Lin before. That kind of incomparably violent and destructive aura was something that he would never forget in his entire life. Yi's breathing suddenly became rapid, and he pointed at the third young master and shouted, Third Highness, do you know what you're doing? That's... Of course we know, Sword Saint said and stabbed out with his sword. No one dared to underestimate Sword Saint's sword. Yi felt like he was facing a great enemy. His hands turned into a shadow and blocked the sword in front of him. Marshal Qin, what are you waiting for? Yi shouted anxiously. Now, only the 22 gold warships commanded by Qin Lan had any hope of stalling the Red Disaster for a while. Only then would he have the chance to get rid of Sword Saint and report this shocking news to the Emperor. However, at such a critical moment, Qin Lan didn't make a move. I didn't want to be in such a hurry. Qin Lan moved her wrist. Her exquisite wrist armor made a pleasant metallic sound. But if we don't make a move, the Red Disaster will probably take down all those warships. Those are the Empire's precious assets. We can't afford to lose them. Qin Lan said and flew forward. She clenched her right fist and punched at Yi's back. Bang! Marshal Qin was one of the strongest people in the world. Her strength was at the pinnacle of diamond. Her punch was like a dragon's roar and a tiger's roar. The momentum was astonishing. The resulting sonic boom could be heard by all the Jinshi army soldiers. Yi naturally dodged the attack very easily, but his pupils shrank to the size of a needle's eye. Qin Lan's punch wasn't about whether she could hit her target. Instead, it was about how she did it. This represented a declaration of war, a betrayal at the last minute. Qin Lan knew that she couldn't hit Yi, so she didn't even use her weapon. Shadow Guard, Yi shouted. Although Yi was shocked, he didn't lose his cool. He knew that it was useless to argue with her at this time. Fortunately, with His Majesty's reminder, he had planted his own people everywhere in the army. Now, as long as he killed all the leaders in the army, he would intimidate everyone. Then, the control of this army would still be his. However, even after Ing shouted for a long time, there was still no movement. Ing looked at Qianlong. His eyes were incomparably fierce, so gloomy that it seemed as if water could drip from them. Lord Ing, are you looking down on me because I'm a girl? You planted spies in my army? So brazenly? Qianlong wasn't afraid at all. She even teased him. The Marshal of the Empire had this confidence. I wouldn't dare. No one in the world dares to look down on Marshal Qin, Ing said with a gloomy face. Dare, I asked Marshal Qin, my Shadowgar brothers. Lord Ing, don't worry. The Shadowgar brothers are not in danger. You capture them alive. How is that possible? Ing didn't believe it. Lord Ing, have you forgotten that this morning's breakfast was made by the cooks of the Jinshi army? Qianlong said. If such a despicable method can make the Shadow Guard surrender, then our Shadow Guard won't be so frightening. Ing said angrily. Of course, ordinary medicine won't work. But if it's made by the legendary witch, Aisha, who has been famous for more than 100 years, I don't know if Lord Ing can accept it. Bane walked out and cupped his fists as he said. Ing looked at Bane and then at Jilin. Suddenly, he felt that the building was about to collapse, and there was nothing he could do. Chapter 195. Sigh. Ing lowered his head and sighed. If it's the work of the witch Aisha, then the Shadow Guard's loss is indeed justified. But no matter how wonderful the witch Aisha's medicine is, how could I not detect the slightest bit of difference? As long as the Shadow Guard felt the slightest difference, they would inform me. Why do you think my disciples haven't shown up yet? Sword Saint said. I see. Ing nodded in understanding. The Empire's military, the Red Camp, Sword Mountain. With the three forces working together, the Shadow Guard is convinced of their loss. Jilin tilted his head in puzzlement, wondering what the Red Camp was. What do you want to do now? Sword Saint asked, as if he already had this legendary powerhouse under control. Qianlong, His Majesty's kindness to you is as heavy as a mountain. Are you sure you want to betray His Majesty? Betray the Empire? Ing ignored Sword Saint and asked Qianlong. I will always be loyal to the Middle Empire. Qianlong said straightforwardly, this is my original oath. But you betrayed His Majesty. Betraying His Majesty doesn't mean betraying the Empire. His Majesty is the Empire. Wrong. Why is it wrong? His Majesty will eventually abdicate, but the Empire will exist forever. Our paths are different, and we cannot work together. Master Ing, you finally understand. Just you wait. If anything happens to His Majesty, I won't let any of you off. Ing said coldly. His murderous intent was extremely cold. He was the only one among all the legendary powerhouses who could assassinate. There was no precedent of anyone who was targeted by him surviving. From what you said, Master Ing is going to leave. Sword Saint said aloud. What? Sword Saint, are you going to stop me? Although I can't beat you, if I want to leave, you can't stop me. Ing said. You're right. If you want to escape, no one can stop you, Sword Saint said. Wait. Jilin suddenly walked out and looked at Ing. Red calamity. Ing eyes narrowed into slits. Jilin walked towards Ing step by step, each step as heavy as 1,000 caddies. The huge momentum completely suppressed Ing. The cosmic array had yet to be redeployed. What could the Middle Empire use to resist the disaster? Brother Long. The third prince took a step forward and stood in front of Jilin. Brother Long, let him go back and report. I need to let my old man be prepared to abdicate. I don't care. Just pay me afterwards. Definitely. The third prince nodded. He then looked at Ing and said, Lord Ing, please go back and tell Father to prepare the Imperial Jade Seal and the Book of Nations. I will go and get them later. Ing was stunned by the third prince's words. After a while, he said, everyone says that the third prince of the Middle Empire is extraordinary and rebellious. Seeing you today, You are indeed better than the rumors. How can you say such rebellious words so easily? Huh? The third prince just smiled and didn't argue. Lord Yi, take care. Yi quietly looked at the third prince. Finally, he clasped his fist and bowed. Then, he turned into a black light and turned around to leave. The third prince, why are you? Bane was confused. This was clearly the best opportunity to kill an enemy general. They're all pillars of the country. It would be a pity to die here. The third prince said. Then, the third prince looked at Qinlan and said softly, Marshal Qin, hello. Greetings, third prince. Qinlan clasped her fist and knelt on one knee as she said loudly, Greetings, third prince. Greetings, third prince. The soldiers of the Jinshi army also knelt and greeted him loudly. Their voices resounded through the clouds. The golden warship in the sky also dropped 9 feet meaninglessly. This was the etiquette of an army meeting the emperor. The third prince raised his hand slightly. The soldiers and the warship rose up. It seemed that the whole world had risen because of the third prince's raise of his hand. Qilin shook his head slightly as he thought to himself, humans just love these meaningless things. Let's go. The third prince took the lead and walked toward the palace. Jinshi army, let's go. Qinlan finally unsheathed her sword and pointed it to the sky. Yes. The soldiers all turned back. The warship in the sky also began to turn its bow. Jilin looked at this dramatic scene and thought that it was so easy to change the direction of humans. The third prince's road to rebellion was paved by Sword Saint. The warship's strength was equivalent to that of a legendary master, the escort of nearly 5,000 soldiers from the border, and the sacrifice of many sects. Most importantly, there was Jilin who had overwhelming combat power. What should have been a fierce and bloody battle had turned into a one-sided situation. Not long after, the rebel army, led by the third young master, successfully broke into the imperial palace. They came to the center of the palace, the Taiji Palace, leaving behind a mess behind him. The Golden King, Li Zheng, they were sitting on the throne that represented the most powerful people in the world. Below the main hall, there were dozens of soldiers scattered around. They were covered in wounds, and their clothes were disheveled. They stared fiercely at the third prince and his men. Among them, there was a burly man with bright eyes and a beard. He was wearing a golden armor and a red cloak. Although his golden armor was damaged and his cloak was tattered, he still looked very powerful. He looked like a fierce general who had just fought his way out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. He stood at the front of the dozens of wounded soldiers and glanced at the Jinshi army soldiers in front of him. His eyes were like torches and filled with righteousness. Although the Jinshi army soldiers had the upper hand, they could not help but lower their heads when they met the burly man's eyes. There was no exception. This was because the armor that the burly man wore was the same as Qinlan's, golden armor and red cloak. That was the exclusive armor of the Middle Empire's marshals. The burly man was the Middle Empire's southern marshal, Luo Fenghu. Marshal Luo. Qinlan gave a fist salute. Marshal Qin. Luo Fenghu shouted. Marshal Luo. Sword Saint held his sword and said, Sir Sword Saint. Luo Fenghu nodded slightly. Marshal Luo. The third prince gave a fist salute. Third prince. Luo Fenghu's chest heaved violently. Luo Yuan. Ouyang Ju gave a fist salute and said 2 words. Enough. You traitors. Do you still have to greet me one by one? Luo Fenghu shouted. If that's the case, may I trouble Marshal Luo to move to the side? The third prince said, I went through so much trouble to see my father. Can you let me pay my respects first? Luo Fenghu was silent for a while and moved to the side. Greetings, father. The third prince knelt on the ground and kowtowed seriously. Greetings, your majesty. Qinlan, Ouyang Ju, and the other soldiers also knelt down. At this moment, Li Zheng was still the emperor of the Middle Empire. Li Zheng glanced at Jilin and said gently, Rise. Even though his own son had led the rebel army to attack him, the Golden King's graceful bearing didn't seem to have changed at all. His appearance didn't change either. It was as if the third prince hadn't fought his way in, but had been summoned here by himself, Qianlan. The Golden King still held a pen and wrote on a memorial. He didn't even raise his head as he spoke. "Yes, your majesty," Qianlan replied respectfully. "Why? For the Middle Empire." "Good answer. Actually, I'm not surprised that you're on Yuer's side. That's why I summoned Luo Fenghu back when the Nanshin Empire's army was fighting the orcs. It was to restrain you." "I understand. What a pity." The Golden King shook his head. "Sir," the Golden King called softly. "The old minister is here," Ouyang Ju replied. "Are you satisfied with today's results?" "The old minister is extremely satisfied. Sir, you've always blamed me for killing too many of your students. Do you want to prove that I was wrong today?" "Yes, I wasn't wrong. Now that the third prince has successfully taken the throne, only one of the princes has passed away. There are only 13 left who have their own forces. This is the great fortune of a country." "No, sir." The Golden King shook his head slightly. "These are the causes of future chaos." "You mean the princes will rebel?" "That's inevitable. We can be more vigilant in the future. You can watch over 2 or 3, but you can't watch over a dozen. Isn't there a saying? Don't be afraid of thieves stealing, but be afraid of thieves remembering. Moreover, it's hard to guard against thieves in your own home. When the third prince has a strong foundation in the future, the princes will naturally lay low and live in peace." "Haha, sir." The 16th prince dared to attack the palace with half a battalion of soldiers. The 11th prince dared to take a gamble when he had no chance of winning. This shows that people can't be rational in the face of the temptation of the throne. "Not necessarily. Then we'll see in the future." "Bane," the emperor said. Bane didn't expect the emperor to call him. He was flattered and stepped forward. "Your Majesty, that sword strike was good. I haven't been injured for many years," the Golden King said as he touched his abdomen. Bane's face turned bitter. He didn't expect the Golden King to mention this at this time. He stood beside the emperor, holding the screen behind the emperor, and glared fiercely at Bane. If Yi's cultivation was higher, and he could kill with his eyes, Bane would have been beheaded by now. As soon as He got angry, he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. He was already seriously injured. When the third prince attacked the palace, Luo Fenghu commanded 5 dragon-class warships and 30 elephant-class warships to fight against Qianlan. The third prince's side naturally fell into a disadvantage. Then Jilin joined the battle between the warships. Jilin, who had completely let go of himself, became about the size of a dragon-class warship. But those warships were as fragile as immobile targets in front of him. Just as Jilin was happily dismantling those warships, he made his move. He aimed at Jilin's eyes and was ready to launch a sacrificial strike. Then Jilin swung the warship and smashed it at him. The only reasoning he was still alive was because of his profound cultivation, and he was able to dodge in time. Chapter 196. As for the fact that Yi was still alive, even Jilin felt a little regretful. But on second thought, humans design warships not to smash people, so it was normal for him to fail. Thinking of this, Jilin felt that he had opened up a lot. "Brother Mingwei, you were becoming the emperor. Did you get what you wanted?" The Golden King said. "I wonder how many disciples of Sword Mountain were injured this time?" "You don't need to worry about the disciples of Sword Mountain. As for you becoming the emperor, even you and I have an explanation to Ming. The Sword Saint said, now that we have painstakingly built such a high platform for you, you should take advantage of it. There's no hurry." The Golden King shook his head. "Although I know that Ming doesn't want you to be the emperor, we can talk about this later." The Golden King called. "Father, your son is here." The third prince cupped his fists and said, "Speaking of which, this is the first time you and I have met here." "Yes. I didn't expect to meet on the battlefield for the first time. I am not surprised by today's scene. I knew that sooner or later, there would be a day when a son would lead an elite army into the palace. Because this is retribution. As the saying goes, what you get with the sword will eventually be lost with the sword. Sooner or later, you'll have to pay it back. I just didn't expect it to be so early, and I didn't expect that the person would be you." You were. You left home when you were young. You may not know, but you have always been the object of worship in the hearts of your brothers. They yearn for you because every one of your brothers has had a hard time since they were young. They also wanted to run away, just like you, but they didn't dare to because they have to study hard every day, civil and military strategy, politics, and people's livelihood. Under the best resources of the empire for many years, each of them can be called a rare talent. But you are not a good candidate to inherit the throne. But I am here now. This is because of an accident, because of a huge accident. Winner takes all. A win is a win. You are come up. The Golden King beckoned from his throne. The third prince glanced at Luo Fenghu. Luo Fenghu took a step back. This was to make way for the third prince. The third prince walked up the platform and stood beside the emperor. The emperor casually handed a memorial to the third prince and said, "Take a look." The third prince took it and opened it. This year, it rained heavily for days, and the Luo River burst its banks in Yangon City. The flood wreaked havoc, flooding thousands of hectares of fertile land. I hope your majesty can make a decision soon. The third prince looked at the emperor. This is a memorial from Lu Muji, the governor of Yangon City. What does my son think we should do? Should we allocate fund for disaster relief as soon as possible? From where? From a national treasury? Everyone in the world knows that there is no money in the national treasury. I didn't expect that you didn't know. Take a look at this. The emperor took another memorial and handed it to the third prince. The governor of Zhonglin County is in an emergency, your majesty. When I was in a small village, I found that the people were infected. A few days later, when I went to check again, I found that most of the 200 people in the village were infected. I have sealed the village and don't know how to deal with the aftermath. I hope your majesty can make a decision. We should send a doctor to treat them. The third prince's words were resolute and decisive. The emperor looked at him and chuckled, as if he had heard the ignorant nonsense of a child. Come. Father will tell you. Do you really think that the governor of Zhonglin County doesn't know what to do? If he really doesn't know, why would he seal the village so decisively? Why would he deal with it so appropriately? Then, do you know what the empire usually does when faced with this kind of situation? The third prince shook his head. Slaughter the village and burn it clean. This is the most straightforward and appropriate method. The governor of Zhonglin County also knows this process. That's why he locked everyone up and waited for me to make this move. Only then would he dare to set this fire. The third prince was trembling with anger. Nonsense. As the ruler of a country, I should protect my people. Killing the people for the ruler. This is violence. Tyrant, you had better give me the imperial jade seal. The emperor wasn't angry at being called a tyrant by his own son. If it were you, would you choose to save those people? Of course. Don't tell me that my middle empire can't save 200 people. Of course. Think about how powerful my middle empire is. Not to mention 200 people. Even if there were 10 times or 100 times more, it would still be a piece of cake. It's not a problem at all. Golden King nodded amiably and said. Then his face suddenly changed, and his voice became stern. He slapped the mountain-like table fiercely. So many. Can you manage all of them? Which one of these memorials doesn't need manpower and resources? You want to be the emperor? Can you do it? Yes. You can do it. Here, take it. The Golden King stuffed the brush into the third prince's hand. He pointed at the memorial and said, "As long as you draw a circle here, I will give you the imperial jade seal. Then I will announce to the world that the throne is yours. Draw it." What does this mean? The third prince asked seriously, although he didn't always stay in the palace. He knew that the emperor's brush couldn't be drawn easily. Moreover, it was on such a sensitive memorial. As long as you draw a circle here, it means that you have given the governor of Zhonglin County the power to kill. He can then get rid of those 200 people and nip the plague in the bud. You want me to kill them with my own hands? The most common thing an emperor does is kill people. But they shouldn't be good people. They should be innocent people. In the eyes of an emperor, there are no good or bad people in this world. There is only value. Killing the innocent is always wrong. Killing 200 to save 10,000. Isn't that right? Teacher said that killing 1 to save 100. This is a classic, but also a bastard question. Teacher also said this to me. But sometimes this world is such a bastard. If you want to be the emperor, you have to take responsibility. Do you dare? The third prince turned his head and scanned the faces of the people below. Sword Saint, Ouyang Ju, Qinlan, Zhao Qi, Bane. The third prince took 2 deep breaths while trembling. He didn't see a trace of surprise on these people's faces. Except for Bane. You dare. The third prince took the brush from the emperor's hand and drew a big circle on the memorial. The red circle looked scarlet and dazzling. The lives of 200 people were erased just like that. Give it to me. The third prince stretched out his hand to the emperor, without any of the respect he showed to his father just now. The Golden King looked at him deeply. His eyes were full of gratification. Take it. The Golden King took the imperial jade seal from the table and placed it firmly in the third prince's hand. You must remember, as an emperor, you must let go of your emotions and do everything for the sake of the empire. What are you doing? Father, I didn't have any intentions when I rebelled. I just wanted to take revenge on you and make you angry. I didn't expect that uncle and teacher Ouyang would persuade me to change my mind and come to this step today. But now I've changed. I've decided that I want to do better than you. I want to change this country. What can you change into? At least my people won't be burned alive just because they get sick. I won't have to make such a bastard decision. What killing 1 to save 100? What killing 200 to save 10,000? Go F asterisk king hell all of you. I want every one of my people to have enough to eat. They can read the words of the saints. They can have doctors to treat them when they get sick. I don't want to be easily killed because I'm afraid of infecting others. I want everyone in my country to be able to live like a human. The Golden King looked at the third prince in a daze. After a moment of silence, he actually chuckled. What are you laughing at? You think I can't do it? It's not that I think so, but you definitely can't do it. Not just you. Even if the founding father was alive, he wouldn't be able to do it. But that's not what I'm laughing at. I'm laughing because I suddenly remembered that when I first ascended the throne, I actually had the same thoughts as you. Although you haven't been by my side for a long time, you're still my son. Since you have the same thoughts as me, why don't I see any changes in the Middle Empire? The Middle Empire has been established for thousands of years, and it has always been like this. There haven't been any major changes. Even when that female ancestor was on the throne, the lives of the people didn't change much. Some people didn't even know that the emperor at that time was no longer surnamed Li, and she was a woman. What do you mean? When a woman becomes the emperor, we can't deny that she has the determination to change the world. You're right. Even though she became the emperor as a woman, she didn't succeed. Do you think you can do it? I think I can. When you become the emperor, you'll find that you can't change anything. The only thing you can do is to maintain the balance of the country and the court. What's the purpose of maintaining balance? Balance means that there won't be any major changes. It's peace. In the words of the literati, it could be described as the 4 seas are at peace, the country is prosperous, and the people are at peace. 200 people were killed by the emperor, and you call that a country is prosperous and the people are at peace. Looking at the overall situation, yes. I don't think so. You've been drunk in Spring Breeze restaurant for more than 10 years, living in a dream. Now that you're in this position, it's time to wake up. You've woken up from your dream. I've woken up a long time ago. Father, I've heard a saying, you and I are in the prime of our lives, and only when we die in a dream will we fall into old age. Father, you're old. It's time to abdicate. Chapter 197. The Golden King froze for a moment, thinking that this child really didn't grow up. Sir, is this the successor of the empire that you think highly of? Sometimes, a pure heart and a kind heart are more important than anything else. Even if you're living in a dream, you're still so smug. People live for their dreams. But the emperor doesn't. That's why the Middle Empire has been stagnant. The third prince said, but it has always stood at the top of the world. The Golden King said in a deep voice, but it's not enough. The third prince said, Father can understand that you want to seek change, but there are good and bad changes. How do you know that your rash actions won't cause worse results? Someone told me this a few days ago. Whether it's merits or demerits, future generations will judge. Who said that? The third prince pointed at Jilin. The Golden King blinked. This was the first time he had made eye contact with Jilin since he entered the Taiji Palace. Are you the Red Calamity? The Golden King stared at Jilin and asked. My real name is Akagidel, and my human name is Jilin, Jilin said. Bane raised his eyebrows and looked at Jilin with some surprise, wondering why he would say his real name. Even he had rarely heard of Jilin's real name. Whether it's merits or demerits, future generations will judge. This seems to be the saying of the ancestors of the human race. Why? Even the noble dragons deeply believe in the principles of the human race. The Golden King said, the so-called knowledge and principles of the human race never belong to the human race alone, but to all intelligent creatures. But humans never think that creatures other than humans are intelligent creatures. So humans have the illusion that principles are unique to the human race. What do you mean? What I mean is that principles and knowledge have always existed between heaven and earth, and the most common principles are everywhere and applicable to all areas. It doesn't belong to the human race, it's just that humans are good at summarizing. Then who does it belong to? Naturally, to the life that created it. Who can create reason and knowledge? God, of course. Are you really a dragon? Jilin raised his hand. Red scales covered his entire palm and arm, and his red nails were abnormally ferocious. Dragon, why are you meddling in the affairs of humans? I know the humans are nothing in your eyes. Jilin tilted his head and thought for a moment before saying, because you're bored? Ha! The Golden King shook his head and laughed. Stop joking. Dragon, did you know that we had already noticed your existence before you broke into the royal palace of the sacred city? The Golden King said, everyone knows that there is a rare red ore in the Gerda Mountains. It contains rich fire elements and can be used as a weapon's energy source. Jilin furrowed his brows, wondering why he didn't know. Every year, the empires would send experts to Mount Gerda to obtain ores as strategic reserves. This has been going on for hundreds of years. Wait, don't lie to me. Although I don't know much about humans, I still know some basic things. The number of humans is as large as the sand in a river. If the empires had really dug the mountain together for hundreds of years, no matter how big Mount Gerda is, it would have been dug into a huge pit. You're right. Under normal circumstances, that would be the case. However, that volcano is not an ordinary mountain. It is one of the 4 forbidden areas of humans since ancient times. Not only is the temperature of Mount Gerda terrifying, but is also filled with deadly sulfuric gas all year round. Only experts of level 8 and above are unaffected. Moreover, the mining here is not the traditional mining. Mount Gerda will automatically produce elemental creatures periodically. They have no consciousness and wander around the volcano aimlessly. They will automatically attack people who invade their territory. Human experts destroy them. After their bodies dissipate, they will drop red ores. You mean? Humans have been slaughtering elemental creatures for hundreds of years just to obtain some stones to use as artillery shells? The word slaughter is not very appropriate. Because they have no consciousness, they are not considered living beings. They're just moving stones. The Golden King expressed his disagreement with Jilin's choice of words. Jilin's eyes lit up slightly. He thought to himself that they had consciousness, but humans did not have the ability to communicate with them. We'll talk about this later. Please continue, Jilin said with a smile. However, the occasional flame that sprang out from his body showed that he was not calm at the moment. It was originally like this. However, suddenly one day, the experts sent by the empires all disappeared from Mount Gerda. There was no news at all. Naturally, we could not ignore it. Therefore, we sent even more elite experts to rescue them. However, even though there were level 9 diamond level experts, they did not make it out alive. Only a few word were passed on. According to the information, those elemental creatures suddenly gathered together and carried out construction activities in the underground karst cave of the volcano. Jilin thought for a moment and knew that the Golden King was probably talking about the time when Bat-Tel brought countless elemental creatures to build the Red Dragon Palace for him. The elemental creatures that were originally evenly distributed in every corner of Mount Gerda suddenly gathered in an underground cave. Naturally, it became difficult to take action. Therefore, the five empires discussed and decided to take action personally to probe the situation. The hero king of the Divine Dragon Empire heard that you blew a few houses away. Combined with the location, he linked this matter to you. Since this matter was related to the dragon race, the Divine Dragon Empire took the initiative to take on this task. They directly dispatched the Empire's strongest warrior unit at that time, the Dragon Knight captain of the Empire, Tiz. He also personally led a team of Dragon Knights. When Jilin heard this, he suddenly became absent-minded. Suddenly, he seemed to see the human who raised his sword and charged at him despite knowing that he was no match for him. That human who said that he would never understand glory. That human who shocked his soul for the first time. 20 Dragon Knights flying dragons and 20 magicians of grade 8 and above. This was the maximum strength that the Divine Dragon Empire could bring out under the premise of suppressing the marine race. We all felt that it should be foolproof. Because those Dragon Knights were together, they should be able to escape unscathed even in the face of a legendary expert. Jilin immediately recalled the time when Tiz and the others fought their way from the surface to the deepest part of the Red Dragon Palace, the Chaos Temple. They relied on their miraculous cooperation to cause countless elemental creatures and Bat-Tel to be unable to do anything to them. However, we did not expect that the 20 Dragon Knights would vanish into thin air after entering the volcano. Not even a single flying dragon could return. From then on, the five empires did not mention Mount Gerda and avoided it like the plague. Jilin thought that those fellows were living very well in the Red Dragon Palace. They were even helping the dwarves move rocks. We originally wanted to ignore that volcano, but we did not expect you to appear out of nowhere. From the safest place in the world, the Imperial Palace, you forcefully kidnapped the princess of the Empire, the saintess of the Church of Light, Staya. You even destroyed the Imperial Palace of the Semite Empire, causing the emperors of the world to be unable to sleep at night, because the Imperial Palace is no longer safe. When Jilin heard the three words Staya, he scratched his head in distress. He thought that he indeed did not consider this matter at the beginning. What did he capture? It's all Aisha's fault. After that, you went to the Snow Wind Empire. Under the protection of the Snow Wind Empire's war weapons and fortresses, you still dealt a devastating blow to the core city of the Snow Wind Empire, Morag. Humanity's most advanced technology almost collapsed. After that, you participated in the war with the Snow Wind Empire. In one battle, you defeated the 5 absolute top-notch experts of our human race. Sword Saint, Red Dragon, Emperor of Physique, Holy Wall, and Pope. You even caused the death of the acting Pope of the Church of Light. The strength of the Snow Wind Empire was greatly damaged. Finally, you gathered the Dwarf Kingdom. You made the entire dwarf race migrate from the northernmost part of the continent to the westernmost part of the continent. Since then, the Red Force was born. After that, not long after, you went to the Southern Exian Empire and easily became the Beast King. This caused the Beastmen to launch an unprecedented war against the Beastmen. In the end, because of you, the war ended abruptly, but because of this, I dare to call back the Southern Marshal, thinking of stabilizing the situation. The result was obvious. While you were stirring up trouble in the Southern Exian Empire, you were also able to make my Middle Empire riddled with holes. What are you trying to say? Jilin raised his head and looked at the Golden King, already somewhat impatient. The Golden King ignored him and continued. If it wasn't for you, none of these things would have happened. If it wasn't for you, Old Seven wouldn't have died. My princes wouldn't have returned to the capital. The door of the Imperial Palace wouldn't have disappeared. You wouldn't have been able to control the other princes. Gai Mingyue and Qinlan, Ing Yi and Luo Fenghu would have been able to stop them. The empire would be stable, the country would be prosperous, and the people would be at peace. But with you, all of this changed. Red disaster. You don't belong to this world. Why do you want to get involved in this world? Your existence has too much influence on this world. You are an anomaly. The biggest anomaly. I lost because of you. I can't accept defeat. Jilin looked at him for a while and said, You can't accept defeat? Endure it. Chapter 198. The Taiji Palace fell into a dead silence. The atmosphere was so heavy that it was as if it had solidified. It was hard to breathe, until a soldier from the Jinshi army was so shocked that he couldn't even hold his spear properly. Clang! The sound of a weapon falling to the ground broke the silence in the Taiji Palace. Qinlan turned around and glared at him. She didn't have the charm of a normal woman. She was full of intimidation. The soldier quickly picked up his weapon. He knew that in this space, where there were many strong people, it didn't matter whether he picked up the weapon or not. But he still had to do what he had to do. Qinlan only glared at the soldier and didn't say anything else. It wasn't just because of the situation, but because she knew that she couldn't blame the soldier. Who would have thought that the emperor who had ruled the Middle Empire for so many years would directly say that he wasn't convinced? This wasn't something that the emperor should say, although it made sense that he wasn't convinced. What was even more unexpected was that the godlike Qilin actually acted like a hooligan on the street and directly retorted back. And he retorted to the point that the soldier was speechless. The Golden King gripped the armrest of the throne tightly. He thought for a while and felt that what Jilin said made sense. He took a deep breath and calmed down before he said, Even if you can attack the palace, the officials of the Third Prince's palace won't listen to you. The civil and military officials might not listen to your orders. The Third Prince is the rightful heir of the royal family. Why wouldn't the officials listen to him? Ouyang said, Sir, I'm afraid that only these people in the palace would treat a person who stays in a brothel as the rightful heir of the royal family. The emperor smiled. My students and old friends are all over the court. It won't be a problem for me to help the Third Prince win back the officials. Ouyang said, That's true. Sir, you have students all over the world. You can definitely do it without saying anything. The emperor nodded. But what if the prime minister is opposite you? Can you guarantee that there will only be one voice in the court? Zhuge Zhang is indeed a powerful person, but it's a pity. Ouyang shook his head and sighed. What a pity! The emperor's face suddenly darkened, as if shrouded in a layer of haze. Qinlan saw that Mr. Ouyang opened his mouth but couldn't say anything, so she took a step forward and clasped her fist. Your Majesty, please allow me to report. We know that if we want to seize the power of the Middle Empire, we can't avoid the Prime Minister. Thus, we had Mr. Ouyang meet with the Prime Minister in secret. In the end, the Prime Minister was convinced. As in, he also betrayed me? Li Zhang's voice suddenly trembled a little, and then he laughed bitterly. He cupped his hands to Ouyang and said, Mister's eloquence is as good as it was in the past. Ouyang didn't say anything. What about Azin? Are you afraid to come see me? The emperor asked. Prime Minister, he knew that he had let Your Majesty down, so he jumped into a well to commit suicide, Qinlan said. Azin, the emperor suddenly stood up and was stunned. Why did he have to do that? The emperor shook his head and sighed. He staggered down from the throne and then walked towards the harem. His footsteps were unsteady, and his back looked extremely miserable. How could it not be desolate when everyone had betrayed him and he was at the end of his road? His most loyal ally had betrayed him and left him. This finally became the last straw that broke the emperor's back. Sometimes there was no difference between a person and a camel. The Third Prince watched his father walk down from the highest point, but he didn't send him off, because Li Zheng really left the imperial seal on the table. This was abdication, passing on the throne. Li Zheng had already stepped down, but this position must be taken by someone. It couldn't be empty for even a moment. As the saying goes, a country can't be without a ruler for a day. The Third Prince slowly sat on the throne. He held the imperial seal with both hands. Your Majesty, Your Majesty, Your Majesty. Other than Jilin, Bane, and Sword Saint, everyone present knelt down. Even the southern marshal Luo Fenghu was no exception, because this position was personally given to His Majesty by the retired emperor, although there were many secrets. But it was also Li Zheng's decision. He was the one who left the imperial seal on the table. It wasn't His Majesty who let people snatch it. This was what it meant to be legitimate, at least in the Central Empire. A new generation of Golden King was born. Li Yu. Jilin looked at the Golden King with burning eyes. It was really burning eyes because one could see the flames in his eyes. That, Marshal Qin, quickly go and bring the gold from the palace's treasury here. Yes, Your Majesty. The Golden King didn't say anything, and Qin Lan didn't ask, because this was something that had been agreed upon long ago. The main reason was that the two of them tacitly didn't want Jilin to know how much gold was left in the Middle Empire after giving him the gold. The Golden King didn't dare to let Jilin go to the treasury himself, because he believed that if he let Jilin go to the treasury, there wouldn't be any gold left there. Although he was a little idealistic and naive, he wasn't. To the point of believing that a megalosaurus would talk to him about morality when there was gold all over the ground. The Golden King really lived up to his name as the Golden King. Just a part of the palace's treasury was piled up into a mountain of gold in Taiji Palace. Jilin looked at this mountain of gold and suddenly had the idea of looting the Middle Empire's palace. Jilin still didn't know how to hide his true thoughts, so everyone understood the expression on his face. That was unsatisfied, that was greed. The atmosphere in the hall became a little tense once again. Brother Long? The Golden King sat up high and looked at Jilin. Jilin suddenly came back to his senses and looked up at the Golden King. The Golden King didn't say anything and just looked at him with a smile in his eyes. Jilin sighed. Even though he wasn't human, he couldn't fall out with him on the spot and rob the third young master. No, it was better to say that only humans could do such a thing. Jilin waved his hand and put away the gold. Everyone in the hall quietly sighed in relief, as if it wasn't a mountain of gold that disappeared in a thin air, but a mountain that was pressing down on their hearts. Since the matter has been settled, it's time for me to leave, Jilin said. Brother Long, take care. Have a safe trip. The Golden King said, this matter was successful all because of Brother Long's help. I won't dare to forget such kindness. It doesn't matter whether it's a smooth trip or not. As for kindness, it's all done with money. Jilin said, but the third prince, when you said that you want to change this country, do you believe it yourself? I do. Do you know how many humans there are in the world? Let everyone have enough to eat and have doctors to treat them when they're sick. Do you know how many meals and doctors are needed? I still believe it, although it's indeed a little unreachable. It's not unreachable. It should be called a miracle. The world you described is a miracle comparable to the stars. It requires countless small miracles to happen one after another, and not a single one is good. It's a world of miracles. Do you have the ability to achieve this miracle? The ancients said that there are endless descendants. I can't achieve this miracle, but I can start it and leave it to the future generations to do it. When the time comes, I hope that Brother Long will bear witness. I will. Jilin turned and said, also, you should change the way you address yourself. Golden King stared blankly for a moment, then smiled and said, Brother Long is right. I agree with you. As Jilin walked out with Bane, he said loudly, I'm also very interested in the world you described. Just take it as an attempt to preserve this world that both you and I are interested in. The Central Empire. I won't touch it in the future. Let it continue to exist. This is my, aka Gudel's promise. After Jilin finished speaking, he walked out of the Taiji Palace. At the entrance of the Taiji Palace, he turned into a red megalosaurus the size of a palace. With a flap of his wings, he flew straight into the sky. In the sky, he turned into a red flame and shot toward the south, disappearing in a flash. Jilin's transformation set off a gust of wind in the Taiji Palace. Everything in the palace was blown to pieces, but the Golden King felt extremely happy in this gust of wind. From then on, the great rock rode the wind and soared 90,000 miles, traveling to the East Sea in the morning and Kangwoo in the evening. From then on, the ambition of a swan and the blueprint in his heart were all displayed from then on. There was no one above tens of thousands of people. Only the heavens. Chapter 199. Li Jing walked out of the Taiji palace in a daze. He was all alone. The guards in the palace had also suffered heavy losses because they went to stop the third prince. The palace, which was originally heavily guarded by soldiers, was now a rare sight of peace and quiet. Li Jing walked towards one of the palaces in the harem. That was the palace where the emperors lived after they abdicated. He was very familiar with that path, because many years ago, he was the one who personally sent his father to that palace. The only difference was that he was leaving on his own now. Li Jing looked at the grass, swaying in the cracks of the palace floor, and laughed for some reason. It was really rare for an emperor to enter this palace at such a young age, Li Jing thought. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew from behind, causing Li Jing to stagger. Li Jing raised his head and saw Qi Lin flying over his head. In the blink of an eye, Qi Lin disappeared into the horizon. Li Jing looked at the direction Qi Lin flew in a daze. After a long time, he shook his head. He pushed open the door of the palace. He knew that as long as the emperors walked into this palace, they would not be able to come out for the rest of their lives. He should not be an exception. Creak. The sound of the door opening made one's teeth ache. This door had not been opened for many years. Naturally, no one took care of it, so it was natural that it would become like this. That was what Li Jing thought. However, when he saw a person lying on a wooden recliner and fishing leisurely, he immediately changed his mind. This door had been opened not long ago. Li Jing walked to that person's side. He wanted to see who it was. The palace was already turned upside down, but this person still had the leisure to fish and sleep. Was he not afraid of being implicated? When Li Jing saw who the person was, he was so angry that his eyes widened and his hair stood on end. Without any hesitation, he kicked out with his leg. That person was instantly kicked to the ground. Even the recliner was overturned. That person was instantly awakened. When he saw who it was, he quickly got up and bowed to Li Jing. Your subject, Zhuge Zhang, greets your majesty. Aren't you dead? Li Jing pointed at Zhuge Zhang and shouted angrily. How would this subject dare to die? Didn't he promise his majesty that he would retire with his majesty? Look, I've even prepared a fishing rod. The prime minister showed a rare cheeky smile. Was it you who instructed Qinlan to deceive me? Apparently, Li Jing had not changed the way he addressed himself. As the prime minister, you actually colluded with the rebels to frame me? How do you still have the face to see me? Don't worry, your majesty. The Middle Empire is still under the surname of Li, and the power of the empire hasn't fallen to anyone else. Prime Minister Li bowed and said, If that's the case, why not? Nonsense, Li Jing said angrily. If Jiang Shan changed his surname, would I still come here to fish with you? He would have drowned himself in the river. Why'd you switch sides? Your Majesty, please take a seat and listen to me. The Prime Minister lifted the chair and invited Li Jing to sit down. This subject would like to ask Your Majesty, even if this subject does not change sides and remains on Your Majesty's side, what are the chances of stopping the red disaster from the third prince's camp? Li Jing narrowed his eyes and shook his head lightly without saying anything. There was no way to stop it. If that's the case, since we can't stop it this time, we have to set our sights on the future. If he acts on a whim this time, he can help the third prince force Your Majesty to abdicate, causing the Middle Empire to easily change. No one can guarantee that he won't make the Middle Empire no longer be under the surname of Li, or make the Middle Empire disappear from the world. Even the great Qinquan array can't hold him for more than a few days. What else can you do? Li Jing looked at the Prime Minister and calmed down. If he could really use this to suppress the red disaster, then abdicating 10 or 20 years in advance wasn't a big deal. Your Majesty, in order to fight against the red disaster, all the countries in the world have begun to prepare, and they have even taken out their trump cards. The Snow Wind Empire took out all of its wealth to mass-produce the bright snow, godly weapon. The Simai Empire's Church of Light also took out a taboo scripture from who knows where. We can't hold back anymore. You mean? Li Jing stared at the Prime Minister, and his gaze suddenly became very unfriendly. 9 Cauldron Sword. The Prime Minister met Li Jing's gaze and braced himself to say, "Do you know what you're saying?" Li Zheng leaned forward towards the Prime Minister and said in a low voice, "Your Majesty." The Prime Minister knelt on the ground and buried his head very deeply. He said with a trembling voice, "The Red Disaster is the greatest enemy of our human race. Our Middle Empire has stood at the top of the human race for many years. We should step forward bravely. I think you've read too many books these years, and your brain has gone stupid." Li Zheng slammed the chair and said in a deep voice, "Nine Cauldron Sword, you can't touch it. It's not a sword. It's not a weapon. It's not Gai Ming Yue's flowing light. If it breaks, we can still change it. That's a national weapon. It's used to suppress the fate of the country. You want to use it to slay a dragon? That's just wishful thinking. If the Nine Cauldron Sword breaks, the fate of the country will be broken. We can't take this risk. Your Majesty, the Nine Cauldron Sword is the #1 weapon in the world. How can it not be used? How can it be broken? What do you know? Back then, I promised the Nine Cauldron Sword to Gai Mingyue, but when I became the emperor and saw the sword, I gave up on this idea. Even if I had to go back on my word, I couldn't give it to him. Do you know why? I understand." The Prime Minister sighed, "But your Majesty should know what the original name of the Nine Cauldron Sword was." Li Zheng suddenly raised his head and looked at the Prime Minister. "The original name of the Nine Cauldron Sword is the Human Sovereign Sword." The Prime Minister said, "It said that in the mythological era, there was a human ruler called the Human Sovereign. The Human Sovereign had the fate of the entire human race on his body, and when he fought, his might could destroy the heavens and earth, comparable to the God King and the Celestial Emperor." "You want to create a human sovereign?" Li Zheng asked. "That's right. Other than this, I can't think of any other way to fight against the Red Disaster." "Candidate for the human sovereign?" "Naturally. It's the third prince, Liu. Does he know about this?" "For now, I don't know. Becoming the human sovereign is easier said than done. You have to become the ruler of the human race. The Middle Empire couldn't possibly conquer the other 4 empires. That's why you want the Nine Cauldron Sword." Li Zheng didn't say anything. "You don't want to use the Nine Cauldron Sword to conquer the other 4 empires. Instead, you want the third prince to bring the other 4 empires' national weapons to the first mountain with the Human Sovereign Sword. You can ascend to the position of the Human Sovereign." The Prime Minister said, "What a joke. I don't even want to lend a national weapon to my own brother. The other 4 empires are willing to lend it to you? Furthermore, this is cheating the heavens. Your Majesty, this is called cheating the heavens. The War King has already agreed, but he requested that the national weapon must always be under his sight." Li Zheng was stunned, then lowered his head and said, "That's right. He's the #1 expert of the human race, so he must have the confidence to ensure the safety of the national weapon. When did you start doing things behind my back? You can communicate with the War King, and I didn't know about this at all." "Your Majesty misunderstands this subject. When have this subject's actions been hidden from your Majesty? This matter was done by Lord Sword Saint." "I see." Li Zheng nodded slightly, seeming to feel better. "Since that's the case, if you can borrow the national weapons of the other 4 empires, you can take the Human Sovereign Sword." "Thank you, Your Majesty." The Prime Minister knelt on the ground again. Li Zheng sighed, got up, and helped Zhuge Zhang up. "There's no need to do this in the future. I'm no longer the emperor. As for the Human Sovereign Sword, it belongs to you now." Chapter 200. In the sky, in the clouds that were too high for human eyes to reach, Jilin grabbed Bane and flew quickly. High up in the sky, there was a strong wind blowing like a knife all the time. Humans couldn't breathe or survive here, and their bodies would even dissipate like bubbles because they couldn't withstand the strong wind. Even humans who had the ability to fly wouldn't rashly come to such a high place. The only creatures that could fly here should be those high-grade, flying magical beasts. But those magical beasts were very sensitive, and most of them had already noticed Jilin's breath and flew far away. So, the scene in front of Bane's eyes could really be called a vast expanse of mist in the sky. It was empty. It could make people feel that they were the only one in this vast world, but Bane obviously wasn't in the mood to enjoy this beautiful scenery. He was in Jilin's hand, and although he wouldn't be blown by the strong wind, He was still too scared to open his eyes. This might be human instinct, an instinctive fear of nature. Jilin thought to himself as he looked at Bane, who was holding his head and shivering. Open your eyes and take a look. There aren't many humans who can see this scene. Jilin said. When Aisha saw this scene for the first time, her eyes were wide open and she didn't even blink. You could tell that she was a goddess. Bane still didn't dare to open his eyes, thinking that Aisha wasn't human. Then what about Staya? Did she dare to look? Jilin thought for a moment. She didn't even look at that time. She only cared about blaming me for tearing down her house and hurting innocent people for no reason. Bane imagined that scene and couldn't help but laugh out loud. Thinking about it, a princess who had just been taken away by a dragon didn't cry, didn't make a fuss, and wasn't afraid. Then she seriously blamed the Megalosaurus and said, "You're wrong. How could such an abnormal and weird scene not make people laugh?" When Jilin saw Bane's reaction, he let out an undetectable bitter laugh. In his heart, he thought that he had also felt that something was amiss back then. It was a pity that he was still inexperienced and did not detect it in time. Otherwise, he would have returned this princess to him and replaced her with someone who didn't know how to fight, who was weaker, who was more pitiful. Bane smiled, and his mind couldn't help but relax and open his eyes. The first thing that entered his eyes was not the boundless sea of clouds, nor was it the blue sky that could make one feel relaxed and happy with just a glance. Instead, it was the 3 fingers of Jilin's. Bane's first thought was that he felt like he was in the legendary 5-Finger Mountain. However, in the next moment, Bane's heart was filled with endless shock. Because of the 3 giant fingers' ants, Bane looked at it in a daze and didn't know what to say. According to human terms, this situation should be considered as having one's. As for whether it was painful or not, it depended on the situation at the time. But no matter what the situation was, how painful it wasn't a big deal. But Jilin's was a big deal. For all beasts, claws and teeth seemed to be the sharpest and strongest parts of their bodies, because those were the weapons they relied on to survive. No animal's nails were like humans, soft, fragile, and insignificant. Not to mention the dragon race. Bane never thought that there would be anything in this world that could break 2 of Jilin's nails. Even the Sword Saint's sword had only left an insignificant white mark. What happened to your fingers? Jilin moved his fingers. Although a few days had passed, he still felt a dull pain. For something like killing a god, even a dragon has to pay a price, right? Jilin said it casually, but in reality, he was secretly ruthless in his heart. He didn't expect Thatsa's body to be full of cracks after the 700 bright snow gods' self-explosion. Under such circumstances, he could still break his fingers, and he even punched him a few times. In the end, he still underestimated his enemy. If there was another chance in the future, he would definitely get 10,000 puppets to kill him directly. Killing a god! Bane exclaimed. Which god did you kill? The light god? The earth god? The fire god? The water god? Bane revealed all the gods he knew in one breath. Jilin looked ahead and didn't say anything. It was a little awkward in this empty sky. It wasn't that he didn't want to say, but he couldn't. Even the gods that Bane mentioned, the worst one was above the main god's position. How could an underage, ordinary dragon like him reach it? It was more likely that his parents were if Jilin didn't know that he was too powerful in Bane's heart. He would have suspected that Bane was mocking him. Bane saw that Jilin didn't say anything and thought that it was something that was hard to say, so he didn't dare to ask. How long do you need to fly to the Beast God Mountain? Half a day. From the center of the Middle Empire to the Beast God Mountain, you should need to cross half of the Middle Empire, the entire Southern Exine Empire, and half of the Wasteland. Bane lowered his head and pondered. Then where did you fly for so many days? Didn't I say before? To the north of the Snow Wind Empire. No matter how north it is, it can't be so north. Actually, I always had a suspicion. What? You flew so high. Can you see the road clearly? Did you get lost before? If I throw you down now, I can still catch you before you hit the ground. Do you believe it? I believe it. I was wrong. It's impossible for me to get lost. Jilin was silent for a while and suddenly said, "Because your eyes are good, you can see the road below through the clouds. Only humans have the concept of roads. Have you seen any flying creature walk? Then how did you determine the direction? It's you. Me? Do you still remember the days when you lived in the Red Dragon Palace?" Bane nodded. He couldn't forget those days because it was probably the most boring period of his life. He stayed in the underground cave all day long and couldn't do anything. The late king of the Middle Empire also said that ordinary humans couldn't stay on the surface of Mount Gerda, but you lived in the deepest part for so many days. First of all, I know that I could survive in that cave because of you. I didn't even feel a trace of heat. Needless to say, also, in any human empire, only the dead king is called the late king. He's not dead yet. Jilin was silent for a while. That's not the point. What I want to say is that you could survive in the Red Dragon Palace because of the protection I cast on you. People who are blessed will have a special mark on their body. This mark can only be seen by me and is very eye-catching. It's like a torch in the dark night. Aisha and Staya also have this mark. They don't. Aisha has the protection of the god of darkness, and Staya has the protection of the god of light. Can't there be two of them at the same time? No. Bane nodded thoughtfully, and then suddenly asked, "Then which direction are you flying towards?" Although I can't cast protection, there are countless ways to determine a person's position. Wasteland, Beast God Mountain. Sing was sitting on a chair and saying something to the chiefs of the various tribes. The Lion Man Sing, who used to be mighty and extraordinary, was now frowning and sighing. This was because the atmosphere in the Beastman race had changed. Everyone could feel that a storm was about to come. This wasn't the scariest thing. The scariest thing was that no one knew what those brainless orcs wanted to do. This kind of unknown was the scariest thing. Sing felt that the orcs had never been so impetuous before. In the past, the orcs had always been obedient when they had nothing to do. If there was a fight, they would go out and fight. After the fight, they would come back and stay. They had never been like the humans, where some knowledgeable person suddenly appeared and wanted to do something. Therefore, the orcs hadn't changed in the past few years. According to Li Zheng, the world was peaceful and the country was prosperous. But until a few days ago, Jilin's clone suddenly disappeared from the throne, and there was no news about it. The atmosphere of the entire orc tribe suddenly changed. The king of the Beastmen was gone, and he didn't die while leading the Beastmen to war. Instead, he was just sitting quietly in his chair and suddenly disappeared. Who could believe this? No matter how the orcs present patted their chests and guaranteed that they saw it with their own eyes, the rest of the orcs didn't believe it. This was the destined king of the heavens. This was the prophecy of the orcs' rise. This was the symbol of the orcs' prosperity. The Beastmen still had to fight a real-world war under his leadership. How could it be gone so easily and so unreasonably? Because of Jilin's sudden disappearance, the orcs almost went crazy. Sing was puzzled. The orcs had been waiting for Jilin's divine revelation for more than 100 or 200 years. Nothing had happened for so many years. But how could it be so exciting in just a few days? It was as if the sky had collapsed. In the end, it was Aisha who said this. People aren't afraid of not having it, but of losing it after having it. It's just like how humans describe moths that survive in the dark. I could have endured the darkness, but if I hadn't seen the light. Singh admitted that Aisha's description was very apartment. But these pretentious words were of no use in the current tragic situation. That was why Singh had gathered all the chiefs together to discuss countermeasures. Chapter 201. Singh looked around, and every orc chief that he saw lowered their heads. Although he was no longer the Beast King, he still had the dignity of a Beast King. Everyone, how many years have you been in charge of the various races? It's not too much to say that you're like gods in your respective races, right? How can you not control your own people? Now that the Beast King is not here, I'm warning you, don't cause trouble. Hurry up and tell the people below to stop. Sing, you're no longer the Beast King. Don't put on airs with me. You're still the chief of the Lion tribe. Why don't I see you suppressing the people of the Lion tribe? The chief of the giant elephant tribe slammed the table and said in a low, muffled voice, He was obviously not afraid of Sing. Isn't that so? The people below are all spreading the news. Is it because he stole your throne that you harbor a grudge and secretly harmed the Beast King? The chief of the ape tribe also said. Sing's eyes widened, thinking to himself, are all of my tribe a bunch of idiots? Who in this world can harm him? Even if you're thinking blindly, can't you think of a slightly more reliable one? I want to secretly harm him. Look, he admitted it. He admitted it. The fox's tail is showing. The chief of the fox tribe jumped up and pointed at Sing as he shouted. Sing looked at the bright red tail behind the chief of the fox tribe and sighed as if he had given up. Then, without any warning, he threw a punch. Although the chief of the fox tribe was also a top powerhouse, in front of the former Beast King, the legendary powerhouse Sing, he could not even block a punch. Boom! A loud sound was heard. The chief of the fox tribe was sent flying, slammed into the wall, and fainted. You actually dare to attack? Everyone, show him who's boss. You're no longer the Beast King. Why are you still so powerful? The chief of the giant elephant tribe suddenly stood up and threw the table to the side in anger. His body, which was 2 to 3 times larger than Sing, was wrapped in a boundless aura as he charged towards Sing. Compared to the charge of the chief of the elephant tribe, even the raging bull seemed petite and cute. Go. Hit him. I've long found him an eyesore. When the various patriarchs saw that the giant elephant patriarch had already gone up, they immediately howled and rushed up without a second word. From the looks of it, it wasn't just a day or two that they wanted to take action against Sing. You still don't like me? Isn't that obvious? You birdman with eyes on both sides. Who do you think is pleasing to your eyes? As Sing spoke, he knocked down the Condor tribe's patriarch with a punch. Huh, who would have thought that the lion race would look down on the harpy race? I'll teach you a lesson today. You're from the priest clan. What are you blindly meddling in? To be able to become the head of a beastman clan and have the qualifications to enter the Beast God Mountain, one must have the strength of the 9th rank. Although not all of the clan heads were present, there were still more than a dozen of them. Thus, the drama of a dozen 9th stage powerhouses besieging a legend quietly unfolded in the Beast God Mountain, with so many top-notch experts fighting in a cave. Even if the Beast God Mountain was naturally extraordinary, it would still cause an earthquake. The sound of air exploding from the experts' fists reverberated in the cave for a long time, like thunder. The 2 lion soldiers guarding the entrance of the cave looked at each other. They carefully glanced into the cave. Then, they couldn't help but shrink their necks, quickly retracting their gazes and standing still. This bunch of clan heads, what kind of sacred place is the Beast God Mountain? How can they fight inside? A soldier whispered. That's right. Another soldier quickly nodded and agreed. More than a dozen clan heads besieging the former Beast King in front of the Beastman throne. What kind of scandal is this? Yes. As members of the glorious Beast God Mountain, shouldn't we stop this kind of thing? Yes. You go, and tell those clan heads that the Beast God Mountain is not a place for them to fight. Tell them to behave. It's better that you go. This cough. I was just joking just now. Don't take it seriously. Now that the Beast King is not here, our duty is to guard this cave. How can we leave for a moment? That's right. Even if something big happens, we can't leave the cave for even half a step. We can't give the invading enemies any chance to take advantage of us. That's right. The 2 soldiers outside the door wanted to stop this battle due to their sacred mission. But in the end, they didn't dare to enter. This was human nature, needless to say. What was worth mentioning was the battle between the clan heads. The deafening sound of air exploding gradually subsided, and there was no longer the feeling of demons dancing wildly and hundreds of clans shouting at the same time. However, there was only one sound that was still stubbornly sounding. Bang, bang, bang. The sound was extremely frequent and heavy. It was the giant elephant clan head and Sing fighting one-on-one. Because the other Beastman clan heads had already fallen, only this giant elephant clan head had rough skin, thick flesh, and extraordinary talent. That was why he could barely hold on against Sing with his level 9 strength. The giant elephant clan head's fists, which were the size of a human head, punched faster and faster, and it looked like his eyes were already red. Sing was also getting impatient. Finally, he didn't hold back anymore and used all his strength. The giant elephant clan head immediately rolled on the ground like a gourd, rolling over a dozen times on the ground. Finally, his body hit a stone pillar and stopped. The giant elephant clan head raised his hand at Sing and finally put it down weakly. His head tilted and he fainted. At this point, the magnificent feat of more than a dozen level 9 powerhouses besieging a legend ended in failure. Sing looked at the Beastman clan heads lying on the ground and cursed in a low voice. He felt that compared to these people who appear to be idiots on the surface, he was the real idiot. This group of people naturally knew what everyone wanted to do by gathering here today. However, these people obviously felt that compared to fighting, the work of appeasing people was obviously more troublesome. That was why they fought with him. No matter which organization they were in, they naturally didn't have to work after being beaten up like this by their leader. Sing scratched his head and walked to the table to sit down, at a loss of what to do. All of a sudden, a wave of cheers rang out without any warning. Sing frowned, thinking that those cheers obviously came from the ground. If they wanted to reach his position, at least close to 10,000 people would need to cheer at the same time. Were those people finally starting to do something? With that thought in mind, Sing looked outside. In the sky outside, a red comet with a long tail was rushing toward him. That red comet was unusually bright. Even during the day, it was still clearly visible from thousands of miles away. Sing heaved a sigh of relief. "You're finally back. Where have you been these days?" Sing looked at Jilin, who was dragging Bane in, and asked sternly. "I'm not sure either. After coming out of that world, the landing place seemed to be random," Jilin said. "This is?" Sing asked as he looked at Bane, who was limp on the ground with lifeless eyes. "Bane," Jilin said. "Oh." Sanger nodded. "Aisha had mentioned this name to the Dwarf King before. I thought you started to eat people. You even caught someone back. What's wrong with him?" "I don't know either." Jilin shook his head. When he came down from the sky just now and saw a few hundred orcs, he became like this. "Oh." Sing nodded in understanding. This kind of thing was not uncommon. He understood at a glance. The orcs had also existed in this world for a long time. Even if they did not want to, they still had a subtle mutual influence with humans. Specifically, the image of the orcs frequently appeared in many human legends and stories. The specific roles they played were those cruel and bloodthirsty demons and ghosts. Therefore, to humans, the Beast God Mountain should be the biggest demon's den in the world, hell on earth. No wonder Bane was so scared that his legs turned to jelly. "It's good that you're back," Sing said emotionally as he looked at Jilin. "Yes, Dwarf King, where's Aisha? And how's Staya?" Jilin asked. When Bane heard Jilin asking about Staya, his eyes seemed to have regained some life. He grabbed Jilin and stood up with difficulty. He only had one wish now, and that was to not hear the lion-headed monster in front of him say already eaten. "I don't know what the Dwarf King has been doing recently. He stays in the house all day and doesn't come out. Staya is still the same. She hasn't woken up yet. As for Aisha, she's brewing medicine for Staya." "Brewing medicine?" Jilin and Bane shouted at the same time. Their voices were also filled with shock and uneasiness about that. "I'm looking for a recommendation ticket. Thank you, everyone." Chapter 202. Jilin and Bane looked at each other. There was only one thought in their minds. Oh no. Jilin closed his eyes, but Staya's position appeared clearly in front of him. Without saying anything, Jilin grabbed Bane and ran towards Staya's direction. The witch who hated the Church of Light the most in the world was going to brew medicine for the Saint of Light. Naturally, one could only imagine what kind of thing would be boiled out of it. Bane and Jilin both knew that the relationship between Aisha and Staya could not be described as bad. It was like fire and water. However, the reason why the two of them were able to live together for such a long time was entirely because neither of them was able to kill the other. In addition, Jilin was keeping watch at the side, so no tragedy had occurred. But now, Staya was completely useless and had no consciousness at all. Although the Holy Grimoire of Light had the ability to automatically protect its owner, No one knew if this artifact alone could block Elsa, who possessed the holy grimoire of darkness. Qilin's speed was extremely fast. It didn't take long for him to reach Stia's position. Qilin directly pulled the door down from the doorframe. Jilin looked inside the door and immediately let out a sigh of relief. In the room, Stia was lying peacefully on the big bed covered in animal fur. She looked unharmed, and her complexion was better than before. The sunlight that came through the window gently shone on her face, making her golden hair shine and dazzle the eyes. There was nothing else in the room. There was a set of table and chairs by the door, and there were traces of it being used. No one knew who used it, but it should not be Stia. After that, the only things left in the room were Stia's bedside table and a bowl of green medicine on the table. Bane first looked at the bowl of medicine, then looked at Jilin anxiously. The bowl of green thing successfully reminded him of some painful memories that he did not want to recall. Jilin carefully picked up the bowl and sniffed it. As for Bane, he did not even dare to smell it. "How is it?" Bane asked nervously. "How can I smell it?" Jilin rolled his eyes at Bane. "As a dragon, you can't even tell if it's poisonous. Have you seen any poison that can poison a dragon? The ability to distinguish poisons is not what a dragon needs." Yes, dragons are powerful. What do we do now? Why don't you try it? If it's poisonous, even if it can't poison me, it can definitely poison you." Bane's hand. This thing was obviously not to be accepted. Bane shook his head and used all his strength to express his refusal. "What are you afraid of? If you are really poisoned, can't you just ask Aisha to give you the antidote? First of all, this is different from the stories you always read. Not all poisons have an antidote, and it's the kind that can be cured after eating it. Secondly, I have never seen Aisha make an antidote. Have you seen it before?" Just as Jilin wanted to say something, a crazy voice came from outside the door. Jilin, where are you? Are you back?" Jilin turned his head and looked outside the door. He saw the Dwarf King with disheveled hair running towards him with a crazy expression. The Dwarf King now looked like a completely different person. His hair was messy, and his eyes were red. It was obvious at a glance that this person hadn't slept well for a few days. Jilin looked at the Dwarf King rushing towards him with a ferocious face. He didn't know why, but he felt a little scared. Jilin consciously took out the god soul and handed it to the Dwarf King. The golden light illuminated the entire space. Bane looked at the god soul. When this thing came out, Bane had an impulse to kneel down devoutly. The light of the god soul was very bright, but it wasn't dazzling. It also contained a very majestic, holy warmth. The Dwarf King stopped and looked at the god's soul in a daze. He asked in disbelief, This is God's soul," Jilin said bluntly. The Dwarf King's eyes widened. He looked at the god's soul, and 2 streams of hot tears flowed down. However, he didn't seem to feel it. Jilin put the god's soul in the Dwarf King's hand. The Dwarf King was taken aback and hugged it tightly, as if he was afraid that this thing would disappear into thin air or grow wings and fly away. "Artifact, can you make it?" Jilin asked. "Ha ha." The Dwarf King didn't care about Jilin at all and just laughed. Then, as if he had gone crazy, he wandered around the corridor and mumbled some strange words. "Dawn of the dwarf race. Ha! The strong surpass the ancestors. Heaven has eyes. Thank the god of forging for blessing." Jilin was a little puzzled. This thing was obviously brought by him. Why did the Dwarf King thank that god? "Hey!" Bane shouted aloud. The Dwarf King's crazy state made him feel a little uneasy. Bane's call seemed to have worked. The Dwarf King looked at him blankly. Then his eyes rolled and fell to the ground with a plop. "What's wrong with you?" Bane was shocked and rushed up to hug the Dwarf King. But no matter how he shook, the Dwarf King showed no signs of waking up. "Jilin," Bane said anxiously. "It's okay, I won't die." Jilin seemed to be so calm all the time. "I'm just too happy." What's wrong? Why did he fall?" Singh finally caught up. He saw the Dwarf King lying in Bane's arms and asked curiously. "It's nothing," Jilin said casually, then handed the green soup bowl to Singh. "What's this?" Singh took a look and actually took half a step back. This was made by Aisha. It's obvious. Jilin nodded. She told me that if Staya drank this bowl of medicine, she should be able to wake up and her injuries would be fine. Because this is the prescription recorded in the dark scripture. You believe it? Jilin was a little doubtful. I believe it. Then what are you afraid of? As Jilin spoke, he took a step forward with the bowl. Singh immediately took a step back, because Aisha said something after she personally fed Staya the medicine. What? She really won't die. Where's Aisha? She left after feeding Staya the medicine, and we still don't know where she went. She didn't even take this bowl. Then we don't dare. There are things that the orcs are afraid of. Even the strongest lion is afraid of a poisonous snake. Bane glanced at Singh, who was as majestic as a mountain, and thought to himself, what you said is really convincing. There was a snake in this room before as the guard of this room. It's the five-colored snake that everyone in the wasteland is afraid of. As long as it's in this room, no orcs will be willing to come to this room, except for me. Ben sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at the room with some lingering fear. He was glad that he came out alive after going in. However, it could also be because of Chi Lin's presence that the little snake didn't dare to come out, and he was lucky enough to escape. Jilin blinked to show that he was a little puzzled. Because a legendary master is immune to poison. Bane added, yes. Then what are you afraid of? Jilin took another step forward. Singh also took another step back, because the five-colored snake is also immune to poison. Then it drank a mouthful of Aisha's medicine. Then in this room, there are no more snakes now. Thank you for your recommendation, subscription collection. Thank you. Chapter 203. The Dwarf King fell down with a haggard face. Everyone thought that he would be in a deep sleep for a few days and would not wake up. Unexpectedly, in less than an hour, the Dwarf King slowly woke up. The first thing he did when he woke up was to hold the God Soul in his hand tightly. This thing was tightly held in his hand before he fell asleep and could not be broken. The Dwarf King let out a long sigh of relief. Awake? The Dwarf King was startled and turned his head to look. It turned out to be Jilin looking at him motionlessly. Yes. The Dwarf King nodded. Let's go quickly. Back to the Red Dragon Palace. Jilin did not expect that the Dwarf King would say this when he woke up after taking a nap. What? Naturally, we have to hurry up and forge the artifact. This time, the entire dwarf race will participate. No one wants to miss it. Don't be in a hurry. Why not? The dwarf race has been waiting for nearly 1,000 years. I can't wait any longer. Where's your sword? Jilin paused for a moment and then took out the giant sword from the void. The Dwarf King suddenly became short of breath, and his eyes were about to pop out, because the giant sword was now broken into 2 pieces. What's going on? It successfully cut off one of God's arms. It died gloriously. The Dwarf King began to gasp violently and kept comforting himself in his heart. It's okay, it's going to be reforged anyway. It's okay, I can't beat him. Let's go quickly. The Dwarf King lifted the quilt and jumped out of bed. Wait a minute, Jilin said. Where did Aisha go? The Dwarf King was stunned and stopped in his tracks. He shook his head blankly. I don't know. I haven't seen her in a few days. Aisha has a habit. She doesn't use her own furnace to make poison. In that case, where did the furnace that made the green soup bowl come from? Of course I made it. That's poison. You don't know? She told me that it was a prescription recorded in the dark scripture, that it could cure Staya. No, you're lying. The dwarf froze and frowned. What? Could it be that the dragon clan's golden eyes have the ability to see through lies? Not really, but the golden pupil has the ability to see through the dark tome. Therefore, I read that book. It was impossible for that book to contain any prescriptions for curing illnesses and saving lives. That's too conflicting with the style of the book. So Aisha lied to me. No, you're lying to me. This lie can fool Singh into believing me. But there's no way I can fool you. The dwarf race had replaced the position of the witches to have a place in the Snow Wind Empire. Therefore, you should know something about them. How can a believer of the god of darkness cure people? You're able to observe things so carefully, it's really beyond my expectations. The Dwarf King stared straight at Jilin as he spoke, his eyes filled with surprise. He thought that he could deal with the matter with a few words, but now he was exposed in front of his face. This was a little awkward. After staying in the human world for so long, it's inevitable that you'll pick up some bad habits. The Dwarf King nodded his head and agreed with this statement. What exactly happened? Where's Aisha? Why did you help her poison Staya? Compared to forging artifacts, is this important? Aisha's sudden disappearance made me very uneasy. I rarely have this kind of emotion. You can't determine her location. She's special. The Dwarf King sighed, shook his head, and said, I see. What? When Aisha left, she told me that if you keep asking about her whereabouts, I'll give you this. If you don't ask and cover it up. The Dwarf King said, took out a piece of paper from his side, and handed it to Jilin. Jilin took the paper, feeling a little strange. He thought that he finally knew who used the desk in Staya's room. But writing a letter was really not Aisha's style. And why would the Dwarf King listen to Aisha's words so much? They didn't have a good relationship before. Jilin opened the paper with doubts, looked at it seriously for a while, and nodded. I see. Jilin, I'm glad that you can read this letter, because this means that you're becoming more and more like a human. If it was you in the past, you definitely wouldn't have seen this letter. Jilin scratched his head and thought, why did she start off by scolding the dragon? First of all, I need to leave for a while and do something I need to do. You don't have to look for me. We'll meet again soon. As for the green medicine, the Saint of Light was lying in front of me, so defenseless. This was an opportunity. I had to try it. But unfortunately, I failed. The Holy Grimoire of Light is really extraordinary. Since the poison can't kill her, then I'll tell you a way to save her. I don't know if this method will work or not. It's entirely up to you. Because it's not a method, it's more like a legend. I know that ever since the incident in the Snow Wind Empire, you've been looking down on human legends. But this, for the time being, I think it's still somewhat credible. Legend has it that in the endless sea in the east, there's an elf island blessed by the goddess of life. After Jilin finished reading the letter, he burned it to ashes. The Dwarf King didn't say much, and just said, let's go. He clearly expressed that he couldn't wait to forge the artifact. How long do you need to forge the artifact? Jilin asked. It's hard to say. This is an unprecedented feat. When we forge the artifact, we're using the body of a mortal to do the things of a god. No one can say for sure. Can't work? Hearing you say that, I suddenly feel that it's very difficult. Jilin was a little stunned. It can work, the Dwarf King said with certainty. It was as if he wasn't answering Jilin's question, but making an oath to something. Seeing that the Dwarf King was so determined, Jilin couldn't say that he didn't believe him. So he asked, how long will it take? About a year to 2 years. A year. And this is under the condition that everything goes smoothly. Are you kidding me? No. A year. Jilin raised his head and thought for a moment. Okay, let's go. Jilin nodded and walked out with the Dwarf King. He went to look for Bane first. Then he looked for Sing. Then he asked Sing to find a carriage. Because the previous carriage was said to have been driven away by Aisha, Jilin also didn't understand why someone like Aisha, who knew how to teleport, would take the carriage away. This really stumped Sing. He searched all over the Orc wasteland. Where could he find this thing? In the end, Sing was out of ideas. He found an Orc chariot and brought it over. Jilin looked at him with a sad face, then looked at Bane and the Dwarf King. He thought to himself that this thing didn't have any pods. Bane also looked terrible. He looked at Jilin and said, why don't you just move the bed? What if it falls? Jilin glared at him. If it falls and breaks, do you think the Cannon of Light can still be saved? Chapter 204. Bane thought about it seriously and felt that it should not be possible. Even if the Sacred Book of Light was really like what the people of the Saimai Empire thought and could bring back the dead, there should at least be a complete set of bones. At the height that Jilin was flying, if Staya accidentally fell, Bane felt that even Jilin would not be able to find all of Staya's body. Hurry up. I'll help you look after it, the Dwarf King said anxiously. Jilin thought about it and felt that he was still a little worried. In the end, it was Sing who thought about it seriously and found a cage used by the orcs to hold captives and handed it to Jilin. Bane looked at the bloodstains on the cage and could not help but tremble. He could even imagine the despair in the hearts of the humans who had been imprisoned here. It was probably as hopeless as a monk who had been caught by a monster, but no monkey came to save him. Bane even imagined what the cage was for. In the story, a monster said that if they did not keep the captives for 2 days, they would taste sour. That monster said it with absolute certainty. How many people had he eaten to be able to sum up this experience and lesson? Singh looked at Bane's pale face, and it was not difficult to guess what he was thinking. After all, it was rare to see a humanoid creature like Aisha who could remain calm in the Beast God Mountain. This cage is used to hold our orc prisoners of war, Singh said. In the past, tribes often fought with each other. Orcs who were captured alive would be locked in cages like this and then used to exchange resources with other tribes. Oh, Bane instantly sighed in relief. So it's not human blood. Yes, we orcs never take human prisoners. We kill them on the spot, Singh said seriously. The orcs don't have any extra food. Bane swallowed hard. The corners of his mouth twitched, but he did not laugh. This time, Jilin did not disappear suddenly. Instead, he told the tens of thousands of orcs that he was going to get them some weapons and equipment. This was Singh's strong request. The Dwarf King also said that the weapons would live up to the name of the dwarves, and that they would be the best weapons. Moreover, he promised that there would be more than one for each person. The beastmen cheered thunderously, and the cheers of tens of thousands of people soared into the sky. To be able to own a well-made weapon was the dream of every beastman warrior. Not to mention the work of the dwarves. In the sky, Jilin transformed into a streak of red light and flew at high speed. He was holding a huge iron cage in his left hand, which contained the unconscious Staya and Bane. On the other hand sat the Dwarf King and Singh. "Why are you here?" The Dwarf King looked at Singh and asked. "I need to take a look at the dwarven arsenal," Singh said. "You don't trust the dwarves' craftsmanship?" The dwarf suddenly raised his eyebrows. He said in a deep voice, "How is this possible? The dwarves' skills were a legend in the hearts of the beastmen. How could I doubt it?" Singh said hurriedly, "I just want to take a look." Hearing Singh's words, the Dwarf King nodded in agreement. After all, Singh was a legendary powerhouse, and he had given him enough face. "Then what about the beastmen? Without you, won't the beastmen be in a mess?" The Dwarf King asked. "The beastmen are different from the dwarves." "Why do you say that?" "The beastmen are in a mess, and it can't be that messy. The Orc King doesn't care about anything. No matter what your attitude is, the tribes under you will still fight as usual. Basically, no one will listen to you. The only important use of the Orc King is to give the order to attack during the war with the humans. Only at that time, all the beastmen will listen to you, and the Orc King will have the illusion that he can command the entire beastmen. It would be better if you gave the order to retreat, because they wouldn't even care about you." Speaking of this, Jilin nodded slightly, showing that he agreed. He thought to himself that if he hadn't lit the firewall back then, he might not have been able to stop the millions of beastmen. Moreover, according to Singh, he was the most authoritative Orc King in the history of the beastmen, the kind that everyone supported. The Dwarf King looked at Singh quietly. In the end, he didn't say anything and just nodded. As a king, he knew that Singh's words must be exaggerated, because there couldn't be such a leisurely king in the world. When Singh was at the Beast God Mountain, he must have been working hard for the beastmen all night. Now, those remote and weak beastmen tribes hadn't starved to death yet. This was the best proof. Singh must have made all the necessary arrangements before he came out. However, since Singh said so, he planned to listen to him. Jilin flew very quickly. He set off from the southernmost orc wasteland. In order to bypass the natural barrier, he passed by the Nanshin Empire and the Saimai Empire. He flew a curve before returning to the Red World. Jilin looked at the entrance of the Red Dragon Palace and hesitated. Did he go the wrong way? A huge wall made of redstone stood in front of him. If Jilin didn't know that it was absolutely impossible, he would have thought that the humans took advantage of his absence and occupied the Red Dragon Palace. They robbed him of all his treasures and then arrogantly built a city gate in front of his house to prevent him from entering. Is it necessary? Jilin looked at the Dwarf King and asked. This was obviously the work of the dwarves. However, as Jilin said, building a city gate in this barren land was superfluous. Enemies who could come here wouldn't be blocked by a city gate. Enemies who could be blocked by this thing also wouldn't be able to come here. They should be used to it. The Dwarf King chuckled. Then how do we get in? Bane asked. There obviously weren't any soldiers patrolling on the city wall. Come to think of it, even the dwarves wouldn't be so bored. However, if Jilin directly made a hole, it was obviously not suitable. After all, it was built by their own people. The Dwarf King didn't say anything more. He walked quickly to the door and made some noise. Then, the door opened automatically with a loud, rumbling sound amidst the tremors of the earth. The Dwarf King didn't even turn around to greet Jilin. Instead, he walked over by himself. Jilin carried the cage and followed in. Only Bane was stunned. After a while, he realized that only he and Sing were left standing together. Bane's heart suddenly tightened. He put his hand on the long sword at his waist and glanced at Sing carefully. Then, he hurried to catch up with Jilin. So, only Sing was left to look at the door alone. This thing was undoubtedly the work of the dwarves. It looked very rough, but in fact it was very delicate. The dwarves' building must have a mechanism. This seemed to be a characteristic of the dwarves. Even if it was such a useless city gate, it had to be equipped with a mechanism that could open automatically. Only the dwarves could make such a mechanism. If the city gate used to defend against enemies had such a mechanism, then the potential risk would be greatly increased. The significance of the city gate's existence would also be greatly reduced. To put it simply, this kind of mechanism was completely superfluous. Sing didn't believe that the dwarves didn't know about it. This could only be said to be the last stubbornness of the dwarves. Sing let out a long sigh of relief when he thought of this. Previously, he didn't believe that Jilin could bring the entire dwarf race here. He felt that it was simply impossible. But now he believed it. Since the dwarves were really here, then the time for the revival of the orcs was really coming. Oh, 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 oh. Suddenly, a burst of earth-shattering cheers came from underground. It was so loud that the ground under Sing's feet was trembling. Sing was even more certain. The dwarves put down their work underground and cheered heartily. They jumped and screamed as if they had gone mad. They hugged everyone around them vigorously. Then, they patted each other's back excitedly. There were even dwarves who took out a continuous gunpowder steel cannon and fired at the sky. They took this opportunity to vent the excitement in their hearts. The dwarves were so excited. Naturally, it was not simply because their king had returned. It was because their king stood on the high platform in the center, holding up the treasure that was emitting a fierce golden light. After attracting everyone's attention, he said a sentence. My compatriots, this is the god's spirit. No one doubted the Dwarf King's words because no dwarf would joke about this thing. The legendary god's spirit had appeared in front of them. They would be the legendary generation that could forge the god's spirit. For the dwarves, compared with forging the god's spirit, everything was not worth mentioning. The Dwarf King slowly raised his hand. All the dwarves stopped talking and remained motionless, looking at him with burning eyes. With so many people motionless, it was easy to give a strange feeling that time had stopped. My compatriots, the god's spirit forging plan that the dwarves have been thinking about for thousands of years begins now. Oh! Once again, the cheers shook the sky. Jilin hid in the dark, quietly looking at the dwarves, feeling a little interesting. Looking at the Red Dragon Palace that had changed its appearance and looked like a real palace, he felt that bringing the dwarves here was the right decision. Unlike Bat-Tel and the others, who said that they would build a castle for him, they only dug out a cave in the end. At that time, he was very satisfied Bat-Tel was now kneeling on one knee beside Jilin. My lord, you're back. Yes. What's that in your hand? Oh, it's nothing. I'm going to take a nap. You don't have to care about what the dwarves do. Also, if I don't wake up in a year, wake me up. Yes. Bane. Jilin suddenly called. Yes. I know you don't want to stay here. Yes. Go to the Divine Dragon Empire. Yes. Go and explore and find out about the Elven Island. Whether Staya can wake up or not depends on you. This. How do I go? Easy. Jilin smiled. Thank you for your recommendation votes. Collection. subscription. I'm really grateful. Chapter 205. In the letter that Aisha had left for Jilin had conveyed the main idea to Bane. Although Jilin's words were incoherent and his logic was a mess, Bane still clearly understood what he meant. Therefore, Bane knew that he would have to go to the legendary Elf Island. However, he did not expect that Jilin would actually let him go alone. Easy to say. Bane looked at Jilin in surprise, his voice becoming somewhat sharp. You and I have never been to the Divine Dragon Empire. I don't even know the way. How can I go? Also, do you know how far away the Divine Dragon Empire is? This is the westernmost side. That's the easternmost side. This might not be much to you, but to me, I can't reach it even if I walk for 1 or 2 years. Jilin patted Bane's shoulder and said, Don't worry. Even if you don't know the way, someone knows. You know, Bane looked at Jilin. According to his understanding, Jilin should not have been to the Divine Dragon Empire either. It knows. Jilin raised his hand and snapped his fingers. Suddenly, a wyvern flew out of nowhere and circled above Bane's head before landing beside Jilin. Its entire body lay on the ground, not moving at all. Bane was stunned. From what humans knew, wyverns were creatures that had never been so docile and obedient. Moreover, only the Divine Dragon Empire had wyverns. Bane asked, even though he already knew the answer. Let it carry you and fly to the Divine Dragon Empire. It knows the way. Aisha told me about the origins of these fellows. Bane looked at Jilin. You killed all their dragon knights and left these few wyverns behind. Then, you let this fellow bring me to the Divine Dragon Empire. When we get there, won't I be torn into pieces? It's okay. It will come back when we get there, Jilin said. No one should recognize it. It can come back. Wasn't it raised by the Divine Dragon Empire? Don't mind these details. Take this and ask around about the Elven Island. I can only rely on you for this. After all, in human terms, you are the only human in the Red Faction. If I rule the world in the future, how about I make you the king of humans? Scram! Bane pushed Jilin hard, but he didn't dare to use too much force because he knew he couldn't move him. Bane glanced at the bag that Jilin handed over. He opened the bag and took a look inside. He gasped. The bag was filled with gold. Bane looked at Jilin in astonishment. He clearly understood that there was no possibility of any change in this matter. After all, Jilin had already paid for it. Bane didn't say anything else. Under Jilin's gaze, he put away the gold uneasily and climbed onto the back of the flying dragon. Be careful, Jilin said. Okay. When Bane climbed onto the back of the flying dragon, it snorted in dissatisfaction, making Bane's heart jump. Jilin glanced at it indifferently. The flying dragon immediately stopped snorting. It stood up, flapped its wings, and flew out of the crater above its head. It flew toward the east with ease. Jilin looked in the direction that the flying dragon flew for a while. Finally, he retracted his gaze and lowered his head. He fell into deep thought. Ever since he met Aisha, this woman seemed to be planning something. It was her idea to capture Princess Staya. Then, he directly broke the Shengming formation in Shengming City. After that, it was also Aisha who told him that there was something called snow in the world. Then, they went to the Snow Wind Empire. She and Bane went together to accept the mission of helping people find the dagger. In the end, they didn't know how it turned into sneaking into the Duke's mansion. After that, they went to Morag with the Duke. This matter was too suspicious. With Aisha's temperament, how could she do such a thankless thing? She should have stopped abruptly when the matter turned into sneaking into the Duke's mansion, decisively giving up. This was in line with Aisha's temperament. In the contact with the dwarves, he logically had the idea of wanting a weapon. This matter clicked with the dwarves' years-long wish. So, he went to the Middle Empire. This was nothing. But before that, there were 2 suspicious places. He took a map and asked Staya and Aisha to see. Aisha recognized it at a glance and told him that this was the capital of the Middle Empire. Aisha didn't have the photographic memory of the dragons, so she must have seen this map many times to recognize it at a glance. Moreover, the Dwarf King said that before he left, Aisha had a conversation with him. In this conversation, Aisha acted as if she knew nothing about the god's soul. But this was impossible. Aisha was the closest human to the gods in the world because she could directly trade with the god of darkness through the dark holy book. If she didn't know about the god's soul, then, and now, Aisha gave him a letter that forced him to go to the Divine Dragon Empire after he went to the Sinai Empire, the Snow Wind Empire, the Middle Empire, and the Nanshin Empire. She wanted him to go to all the human empires? Was she playing with dragons? What was she trying to do? The more Jilin thought about it, the more upset he felt. It didn't feel good to be led by the nose by a creature that was much lower than him. Vattel saw that Jilin didn't move for a long time and asked, "My lord, what's wrong?" "Oh, nothing. I was distracted." "Sleep, sleep. I haven't slept for a long time. If I don't sleep now, it will be a disgrace to the dragons. The Chaos Temple is ready." "What is it?" "The gold that my lord brought back has been laid out." "Ha ha ha, that's not bad." "Well done." "Thank you, my lord." "Oh, right. Do you know about the elves?" "Yes." You have never been out of the volcano." "How do you know?" "I don't know, but I have known since I was born." Jilin was silent for a while and nodded slowly. He felt that this should be the same as the dragon's bloodline inheritance. "Tell me, the elves have been living in seclusion on a small island in the vast sea since they were born." 2 days later, in a hidden forest at the border of the Divine Dragon Empire, a brown megalosaurus descended from the sky and quickly disappeared into the forest. Bane hurriedly rolled off the dragon's back and ran behind a big tree in a panic. Then, the sound of flowing water could be heard. After relieving himself, Bane let out a long sigh of relief and slowly walked out from behind the tree. He shook his head vigorously. After being blown by strong winds for 2 days, his head was still dizzy. Although this fellow didn't fly as fast as Jilin or as high as Jilin, it flew faster than Jilin. Even Bane, who wasn't familiar with it at all, could clearly sense this fellow's true emotions during these 2 days. Hurry up and finish this and go home. Now, Bane realized one thing. Not all dragons could understand human language. Bane leaned against the tree weakly and took 2 deep breaths. Then, he remembered to take a look at the wyvern. F***CK. Bane couldn't help but curse when he saw it. In this forest, the leaves rustled when the wind blew, and the cicadas chirped brightly. In the depths of the vegetation, the scenery was pleasant and relaxed. However, there was no sign of the wyvern. Bane finally understood. It left after putting him down. Isn't this too impatient? Ben calmed down and climbed up a tall tree. He reached out his hand to block the sunlight and looked around like a bird's-eye view. He urgently needed to find the human gathering place and find the Adventurers Guild to ask for information. Adventurers from all over the world had gathered there. However, to the local authorities, they were just some fugitives of unknown origins. He didn't stand out at all among them. Suddenly, a cloud of black smoke appeared in Bane's vision and rushed into the sky. It was extremely eye-catching. Bane's expression changed. He felt a little strange. That was because there was only thick smoke and no fire. Bane, who grew up in the village and was close to the forest, was very sure that it wasn't a mountain fire. It was more like a smoke signal from the human army. No matter what it was good that there were people. Bane decided to go and take a look. Even if he couldn't get the help of the army, he could follow them to find a way out. Bane made up his mind and jumped down the tree. He flew toward the smoke. Bane's movements were fast, but they didn't make much noise. He was like a cat, fast and light. Her movements were vigorous and agile, like a startled swan. Not long after, Bane was like an assassin and found his way to the army. He avoided 4 or 5 patrolling scouts on the way. Bane judged that the scale of this army wasn't big. It was at most 200. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so few scouts. The target this time shouldn't be too difficult. Otherwise, these scouts wouldn't be so casual. Sure enough, Bane's judgment was right. More than 100 soldiers set up a battle array in front of a dilapidated village. There was smoke and dust all around. This meant that there were soldiers guarding all around. The place had been surrounded by the army. It seemed that they didn't want to leave a way out for the people inside. Kill them. They are all evil demons of the Demon Dragon sect. Don't let any of them go. Kill them all. Following the command of the leading soldier, the the soldiers began to charge. They easily broke through the wall that looked so dilapidated that it couldn't even be considered a fence. Bane looked at the leading soldier, and his eyes became sharp, because he had already heard the screams coming from the village. There were old people, there were women, there were even young children's voices. This group of soldiers was indiscriminately killing the villagers. No, this kind of behavior should be called a massacre. Thank you for your recommendation votes. Chapter 206. Bane's eyes turned red as he listened to the screams. His whole body trembled as he clenched his teeth tightly. He placed one hand on the ground and subconsciously grabbed the soil. Bastard! Bane stared at the leader of the soldiers. Although he was furious, he could still maintain his consciousness. He knew that it was not the time to rush out. Let's go. The leader of the soldiers saw that his men had entered the village and felt that the situation was settled. Then, he led his personal guards and slowly entered the village. Bane's eyes lit up. The opportunity was here. Bane took a deep breath and activated stealth. He carefully sneaked into the village. He knew that he was not Jilin. He did not have the ability to crush everything. Not to mention Jilin, even if Staya was here, she would not put these 100 soldiers in her eyes. But he could not. He was only a small thief who had just entered the 3rd tier. Although in the eyes of ordinary people, he could barely be considered a strong person, but he was still far from being able to fight against 100 people. Not to mention 100 specially trained soldiers. If he wanted to save those people, he could only take the risk and hope that he could capture the leader first. And this also required an opportunity. If the villagers were strong enough and could create an opportunity for Bane, then Bane would help them. If not, Bane could only find another opportunity to avenge them in the future. Not everyone could be like Jilin, who could take the head of a general from an army of 1,000,000 soldiers and burn them to ashes with a flip of his hand. Under normal circumstances, you'd be dead before you could even see the general. Bane quietly followed behind the leader of the soldiers. His stealth was very clever, and no one noticed him. Unfortunately, the leader of the soldiers was surrounded by his soldiers and did not give him any opportunity. "Big brother, look!" Suddenly, a soldier pointed to the front and shouted, "What's wrong? Report. Those evil cult sorcerers have been prepared for this. There's a tunnel under the village." "Tunnel? How big is it? Why didn't the scouts find it?" "It's currently unknown. The tunnel was too complicated, and the entrance is too well hidden, so old Lu didn't find it." "Where is the entrance?" "Dragon King Temple." "Take me there." "Yes." The leader of the soldiers also began to run. Following the soldier who reported the news, they soon arrived in front of the Dragon King Temple mentioned by the cavalry. "Is this the place?" The leader of the soldiers looked at the inconspicuous temple in front of him and asked aloud. The temple was built with large pieces of yellow bricks. Although it looked sturdy, it was extremely rough. The door of the temple was not big and could only allow 2 or 3 people to pass through side by side. Such Dragon King temples could be seen everywhere in the Divine Dragon Empire. "Yes," the soldier replied. The leader of the soldiers poked his head in to take a look. It was pitch black, and he couldn't see anything clearly. However, he rolled his eyes and made up his mind. "Light the smoke signal at the entrance of the temple and smoke everyone out. At the same time, set up archers at the entrance of the temple. Shoot whoever comes out." What is this? "Hurry up and carry out the order. Our men have also gone down." The leader of the soldiers was stunned when he heard this. Then he looked around. Only then did he realize that there weren't many of his men at the entrance of the temple. "Idiots!" The leader of the soldiers shouted angrily. He slammed his sword into the ground, creating a pit. The situation in the tunnel is unclear. What are traps? What if there is an ambush? What are you going down for? Our brothers are afraid that there are other exits in this tunnel. We are afraid that the evil sect members will escape. Forget it. How are the brothers who went down now? Nothing out of the ordinary so far. Tell all the brothers above to go down. Provide support. Since they have already gone down, why don't they all go down? I don't believe that a motley crew can do anything to my brothers from the Flying Fish Battalion." The soldier was shocked when he heard this. He said anxiously, "Go down? What if? What are you afraid of? Even if it is a mountain of swords and a sea of flames, I dare to take my brothers and charge through it. Bane watched as the soldiers walked into the tunnel one by one with torches and disappeared into the darkness. However, 3 people stood at the entrance of the temple and didn't go in. Big brother, aren't we going to hold the line? The soldier, standing to the left of the leader, turned his head and asked, "If you want to cross a river, you have to know how deep the water is." The leader said faintly, "What do you mean?" The soldier on the left asked with his eyes wide open. "Big brother, you mean to let those people explore the path for us and test the water?" The soldier on the right said. "Oh." The soldier on the left nodded as if he had suddenly understood. However, he stopped abruptly halfway through his sentence. The leader of the soldiers turned his head in surprise. Then his eyes widened. He saw a small black arrow piercing into the soldier's back. The soldier's eyes rolled back and he fell to the ground. "Second brother," the soldier on the right shouted. "Who is it?" The leader shouted. "Come out." Bane couldn't help but shake his head in the dark. "If I would come out just because you asked me to, why would I hide?" Bane cursed in his heart. He collected his thoughts and raised his hand to the soldier who was holding the body and crying loudly. On his wrist was a set of intricate hidden swords that the dwarves had specially made for him. This set of hidden swords could be activated silently. Furthermore, it was dipped in the poison that Aisha had left behind. As for Aisha, she had a hard criterion for poison, and that was to kill as soon as it touched blood. Once again, the poison arrow was shot out silently. The soldier who was crying suddenly stopped crying. Silently, 2 of his life and death brothers had lost their lives. The leader of the soldiers narrowed his eyes into a dangerous slit. "What kind of hero are you to attack people in the dark? Come out if you dare." Bane didn't say anything. He only aimed his hand at the leader again. A soft ding sounded. The leader seemed to have sensed the trajectory of the arrow. He raised his arm and blocked the arrow with his arm shield. Bane clicked his tongue. He knew it wouldn't be that simple. "I am a disciple of Mount Bearingmoon. My defensive skills are the specialty of my sect. Your arrow can't hurt me. Come out." "Nonsense. Who knows what Mount Bearingmoon is?" Bane cursed in a low voice as he adjusted the hidden arrow mechanism in his hand. "Beast. You're worse than a beast. Jilin has never killed a child. This was the work of the dwarves. Of course, there would be mechanisms. This hidden arrow had 2 modes. One was like just now, silently killing without a trace. The other was like a thunderbolt, breaking the enemy's front line. By the time Bane chose a new position, the hidden arrow in his hand had been adjusted. Bane's fingers moved slightly. A series of mechanical sounds sounded. Duh. Bane could feel that the hidden string in the hidden arrow suddenly tightened. Then there was a bang sound. The short arrow left the string and made an ear-piercing sound. The recoil from the short arrow made half of Bane's arm numb. Such a huge movement naturally couldn't be hidden from an expert who was on full alert. The soldier determined Bane's position in time and raised his arm shield in advance. Dang! A light sound was heard. The short arrow easily penetrated the arm shield and pierced through the soldier's breastplate. However, at this moment, the power of the short arrow seemed to have been exhausted. It couldn't break through the last invisible barrier. What a strong force! The soldier looked at the translucent arm shield and said with some lingering fear, "What realm are you?" Bane walked out of the forest openly. He had already given up on the idea of killing this guy with his hidden sword. 3rd level, late stage. The soldier looked at Bane and said, there was no need to be secretive. They had already fought to this extent. The other party must have already seen through his strength. "Oh," Bane nodded. It was about the same as him. "Who are you, sir? You actually dare to make an enemy of the Divine Dragon Empire's army. Do you know that this is treason? Isn't it natural for an empire to betray an empire that slaughters its own people who can't fight back? Those are the demons of the demonic dragon cult. Those old people and children too. Those who achieve great things don't care about trifles. Moreover, they're harboring the demons of the cult. They deserve to die. It's you who deserves to die. You only know how to sneak attack like a mouse. Come and try it. I want to kill you to avenge my 2 brothers. Quickly tell me your name." I don't kill nameless people with my spear. Bastard, I'm your father. Vane couldn't help but blurt out after holding back for a long time. After scolding, he felt that something was wrong. It seemed that he was scolding himself as well. The soldier's face turned purple with anger. He raised his spear and rushed forward. Vane clenched his teeth and finally made up his mind. He let go of the black dagger in his hand and took out the long sword hidden behind his back. Vane waved the long sword. The sword was like a swimming dragon. Summon, not return. After one move, Vane carried the soldier's head and walked towards the temple. With this, he believed that he could intimidate those soldiers, just like how he intimidated a pack of wolves. That soldier obviously had many tricks up his sleeve. Even after he died, he still had a look of disbelief on his face. But in fact, his death was not unjust. Even Jilin felt that the exquisite sword move created by the sword saint was difficult to deal with. He could only break the sword with brute force. Faced with such a sword move, the soldier could only die with his eyes wide open. Not long after, groups of soldiers ran out of the temple in a panic. They shouted, "Commander is dead." After a while, the villagers came out of the tunnel. Looking at the soldiers running away, they let out excited cheers. Vane stood in the middle of the crowd. His expression was so gratified that it was disgusting. Chapter 207. Vane did not expect things to be so easy. All he did was carry that person's head and walk to the front of the enemy formation. Before he could say anything, those soldiers ran away as if they had seen a ghost. The quality of the Divine Dragon Empire soldiers was not very good. Suddenly, a hunched and trembling old man with a walking stick walked up to Vane excitedly. Without saying anything, he wanted to kneel before Vane. "Hero, thank you for saving our village." Vane was shocked. No matter how he looked at it, this old man could not be younger than 80 years old. If he was not an orphan, this old man would probably be older than his grandfather. How could he accept the fact that he had knelt down in front of him? "Old man, please don't. This little one doesn't deserve it. It's my duty to help when I see injustice." Vane reacted quickly and caught the old man before his knees hit the ground. "Old man, why did those soldiers attack you?" It would have been better if this matter was not mentioned. The moment it was mentioned, the old man's eyes reddened. "Those damned bastards said that we were harboring evil sect members and wanted to exterminate us." When Vane saw the old man's pitiful expression, he could not help but empathize with him. He waved his fist angrily and said, "Those bastards! If you want to condemn someone, why worry about the pretext? How could they say such obvious slander? They're simply shameless." Yes, Hero is right. They are a bunch of bastards. "Old man, there's no need to be so polite. How can I be called a hero?" "Then, how about this old man call you young hero? You are definitely worthy of it." "Haha, you flatter me. Right, since there are no evil sect members, why did the soldiers surround this place?" "Oh, it's because 2 days ago a little brother from the Red Dragon sect came to our village covered in injuries." "Ah, isn't that an evil?" "Nonsense. How can the Red Dragon sect be an evil sect? Everyone in our village is a believer of the Red Dragon sect. How can we stand by and watch when our fellow sect members are in trouble?" The old man's righteous words gained the approval of the surrounding people. Right. The village chief is right. The dragon flames will never be extinguished. Purify the world. Purge the world. Bestow upon me the blazing holy flame. Red Dragon God. Vane looked at the fanatical expressions of the people around him. He felt cold sweat dripping down his back and his vision turning black. It turned out that these people were all evil cultists. Didn't that mean that those soldiers were the good guys? Am I helping the tyrant? Just as Vane was at a loss for what to do amidst the crowd's cheers, a child suddenly walked up to him and whispered, Brother, come with me. Someone wants to see you." Vane lowered his head and looked at the little girl's innocent eyes. His heart suddenly calmed down. No matter what, a child like this must be innocent. It was wrong to want to hurt such a child. No matter what. Vane followed the child into the temple. The underground tunnel of the temple was indeed winding. After 7 or 8 turns, they finally arrived at their destination. "Big brother, I've brought him to you," the girl shouted in a crisp voice. At this moment, there was only darkness around them. Even Bane did not notice that there was someone else here. "Oh, thank you, Xiao Tuanzi." A weak voice sounded in the darkness. Following that, a flame lit up without warning. A torch that was originally stuck in the wall was lit. The flame lit up the entire space. A young man with a pale face was lying on a clean bed. It was not hard to tell that he was seriously injured. Bane first looked at the young man, then at the torch. The torch was a few meters away from the young man. It was impossible for him to light it in such a state and then lie back down without alerting Bane. So there was only one possibility. This person was a fire magician. "You're called Xiao Tuanzi," Bane said to the little girl. "Yes. Can you leave first? I have something to talk to this big brother." The little girl hesitated and looked at the young man. Only when the young man nodded slightly did the little girl nod her head vigorously and run out with a smile. Bane watched the little girl leave. When he saw the little girl turn a corner, Bane immediately drew his sword from his waist. He pointed his hidden blade at the young man. He was already sure that this guy was the evil cult demon that the soldiers had mentioned. "Cough, cough. You're the one who helped the villagers defeat the Empire's soldiers?" The young man was fearless and calm. "If that's the case, then thank you very much. My name is Lei Sei. May I know your name? You're the one who lured the soldiers here." Bane did not let his guard down. "Yes, you knew that the innocent villagers would be hurt. You just tried to divert the disaster. You should be punished," Bane said coldly. "HM?" Lei Sei looked at Bane strangely. "From your tone, you're from the Middle Empire?" "No." "Oh, then you've been in the Middle Empire for a while. That country's culture is very deep and has a strong influence." Ding! A short black arrow pierced into the wall next to Lei Sei's ear without warning and made a crisp sound. Lei Sei looked at Bane, and for the first time, there was some emotion in his eyes. "My arrow is poisonous," Bane said in a threatening tone. What he meant was that he could easily kill Lei Sei if he wanted to, so he was the one who had the upper hand. Lei Sei heard this, and his nose twitched. His thin eyebrows furrowed. "It's obvious that the smell is too strong. You can smell that? If you smell it carefully in a semi-enclosed space like this." The person who made the poison obviously did not hide the smell. "Who are you?" Lei Sei. "I'm not talking about the name. Red Dragon follower. Do I need you to tell me that? Then there's nothing to say. You're not as simple as you say. How do you know? First of all, you're proficient in medicine. Just because I can tell that the arrow is poisonous." "Yes." "Stop joking. Normally, weapons with a strange smell are most likely poisonous. Secondly, you know about formations." "What do you mean?" "When I came in just now, I sensed that this tunnel coincides with the Middle Empire's formations. No wonder those soldiers couldn't find anyone after coming down for so long. I admire your knowledge. I really didn't expect to meet someone proficient in the Middle Empire's formations here. Now, can you tell me where you came from? What are you trying to do by hiding here?" "I'm really not lying to you. I'm just an ordinary person. The only thing that's different about me is that I have a wish." "Let's hear it." "I want to overthrow the Divine Dragon Empire." Bane almost fainted. He thought about how he had just helped the third prince take over his father's position a few days ago. And now he heard that this guy wanted to overthrow the Divine Dragon Empire. What kind of fate was this? Who are you trying to fool? Do you think that the Divine Dragon Empire is a child on the side of the road? You think you can overthrow it just because you say so? You managed to force those 100-odd soldiers into such a sorry state. How are you going to overthrow the Divine Dragon Empire? That's why I joined the Red Dragon Church. Now, the legendary expert Flay is the church master. She has the power to overthrow the Divine Dragon Empire. Bane sneered. He felt that this person was simply lying without thinking it through. "It looks like you don't believe me. I can't believe anyone with a brain. Thinking about it, it's almost time." "What time?" As soon as Bane finished speaking, he heard a rush of footsteps. Bane turned his head and looked over by the light of the fire. For villagers jogged over while carrying a stretcher. The villagers nodded at Bane and walked past him, nimbly placing Reese on the stretcher. Reese smiled at Bane and said, "Come with me. Let's see the Divine Dragon Empire's darkness for ourselves. After you see it, I believe you'll understand my thoughts." Chapter 208. Bane helplessly lowered his arm. He couldn't kill Lei Sei on the spot in front of these villagers. He could understand how important Lei Sei was to these villagers. After all, this was someone that the entire village would rather go against the Empire to protect. Bane helplessly shook his head when he saw that they had already walked out. In the end, he still followed them. Ever since these 4 villagers came in, the initiative was no longer in his hands. Bane followed the stretcher all the way out of the village and into the forest. Then, he realized that many people had already gathered here. Most of the villagers that he had seen earlier were here. It seemed like the entire village had already come out. When the villagers saw him, they even greeted him with friendly expressions. Bane felt a little strange. He thought to himself, why did everyone come out? There are so many mosquitoes in the forest. Could it be that they knew that they had committed a serious crime and wanted to escape because of the conflict with the army? Even so, there was no need to be in such a hurry. No matter what, they had to clean up, right? What are you trying to do? Bane was a little confused. Look, it's here. Lei Sei pointed to the sky. Bane looked in the direction that Lei Sei was pointing and saw a black shadow flying towards him from the horizon. Bane couldn't help but open his mouth wide in shock. This was because he was far too familiar with that black shadow. He immediately recognized that it was the silhouette of a dragon. However, it was many times smaller than Jilin and looked a little comical. Bane was probably the only person in the entire continent who could see the divine dragon empire's flying dragon as comical Dragon Knight. Lei Sei said in a gloomy voice as he stared at the flying dragon. Dragon Knight? Bane repeated doubtfully. Are there dragons that can be used as mounts? You are so knowledgeable, yet you don't know about the divine dragon empire's strongest fighting force, the Dragon Knight? Lei Sei was surprised by Bane's reaction. Bane shook his head, indicating that he really didn't know about this. Although Aisha and Staya, who were really knowledgeable, had taught him a lot of knowledge about the various countries on the continent, the two of them had never talked about the Dragon Knight before, because no one dared to mention these 3 words in front of Jilin. Moreover, they still weren't sure how far away Jilin could hear. Quiet, Reese suddenly said in a low voice. The villagers behind him all shut their mouths obediently. For Dragon Knight, this distance is already very close. Dragons have excellent hearing, so we can't let it discover us, Reese explained to Bane in a low voice, afraid that his recklessness would implicate these people. Bane glanced at him and thought, I know this better than you. Watch carefully, Reese sneered. Bane turned his head and saw the wyvern carrying a human flying calmly above the village. Then, he casually spat out a fireball, turned around, and left. This series of actions could be described as smooth as flowing water. It ended very quickly. The wyvern and the Dragon Knight didn't even look at the fireball before it landed on the ground. What did he mean by disdain? Bane felt that the wyvern's action of spitting the fireball at the village was like a person walking on the road and casually spitting on the ground. However, the difference was that when a person spat, the ground would at most be a little dirty. 2 passers-by with bad eyesight would just step on it and clean it up. However, the result of this wyvern spitting out a fireball was that the entire village turned into a raging sea of fire. Bane broke out in a cold sweat. Only now did he understand why these people were hiding here. If he and these people were still in the village at this time, their fates would naturally be self-evident. This is... Bane turned his head and asked when he saw that the wyvern had already flown far away. Can't believe it? Reese laughed. How dare the divine dragon empire kill innocent people so brazenly? Bane gritted his teeth. This is called killing a chicken to warn the monkey. It's better to kill 1,000 innocents than to let one go. These are the lives of 200 or 300 people. To an empire like this, it's not worth mentioning. Bane shook his head slowly. There's a saying in the Middle Empire, the law can't punish the masses. Their emperor also has a saying, the execution of 9 generations of your family. Why aren't you angry? Bane suddenly discovered something strange. Apart from him, everyone here appeared very calm. It didn't seem like the reaction of someone whose house had just been burned down. This is the Divine Dragon Empire's normal method of dealing with evil cults like us. We're already used to it, Reese said. The villagers behind him nodded repeatedly. These people are all members of the demonic dragon church. Bane looked at Reese and asked, "You're all together?" "That's right, but we are from the Red Dragon Church." Reese nodded. Everyone in this village is a member of the Red Dragon Church. The higher-ups received news a few days ago that the Divine Dragon Empire's people discovered this place. They sent me to save the lives of these church members. However, I didn't expect that the leader of the soldiers to be so capable. He and those soldiers made me look very miserable. I didn't expect that you would kill them. But even if you are indeed members of the Red Dragon Church, what wrong did such a young child do? Do you know how these people gathered together? Do you know why I want to overthrow the Divine Dragon Empire? Aren't these people originally from the same village? Bane asked. No, these people are pitiful people who have lost their homes. They were settled here after joining the Red Dragon Church. As for me, on the day my village turned into a sea of fire, I was fishing in the river. Your village was also burned down by the Dragon Knights. Reese nodded lightly. The nobles of the Divine Dragon Empire relied on the help of the dragons and became more and more unrestrained in recent years. Their oppression of the people was very tragic. Originally, it was still tolerable. However, ever since the Empire lost 20 Dragon Knights a few years ago, they became even worse. They made our lives unbearably miserable. These people also don't want to join some new and unknown religion, but we need a belief that can support us to continue living. The great red megalosaurus has descended to the world. He is the messenger of God. He has supreme power, and the flames behind him can burn all the filth in the world. He punishes the wicked and rewards the virtuous. The weak will no longer be bullied, and fairness will reappear in the world. The people will no longer fear the threat of flames, and the wicked will no longer use the flames to harm others. This is because all the flames belong to the Red Dragon God. The innocent wyverns will no longer be bewitched by the wicked. This is because they have seen their true belonging. When the Red Dragon God looks down on the world, all ghosts and demons will vanish. When Reese recited the metaphysical words in a sacred tone, the villagers behind him all knelt down and kowtowed to the sky with pious faces. They shouted, "Dragon flames will never be extinguished. Purify the world. Purge the world. Dragon flames will never be extinguished. Purify the world. Purge the world." Only Bane stood there awkwardly. He didn't know whether to move or not. He listened to the slogans of the villagers and felt that it was not too much to call them a cult. Listening to them, they wanted to burn the whole world. Purify the world. How? Burn it with fire? That's called cremation. Okay. Although Bane started to feel that these people were very ignorant and whimsical. But when these people kowtowed to the sky seriously and meticulously for a while, Bane felt that these people seemed to be glowing from the inside out, shining directly into his heart. He felt this kind of light from Stia's body before. This might be the unique charm of these religious believers who had a firm belief. Bane suddenly felt that these people seemed to be living a good life. Aisha told him a story. It was a conversation between a soldier and a believer. The believer said to the soldier, "You are not living for yourself, because there are many people standing above you, your king, your general." The soldier asked, "Then who is standing above you?" The believer said, "Only God." After a while, Reese's recitation ended and the villagers all stood up. "What did you recite just now?" Bane asked. "The Red Dragon Scripture, which is the doctrine of the Red Dragon sect," Reese said. "You have a doctrine?" Bane asked curiously. "Who are you looking down on?" "The Red Dragon Scripture is... The Church of Light has the Holy Scripture of Light, so the Red Dragon sect naturally has the Red Dragon Scripture too." Hee. What's the meaning of your act just now?" "It's already so obvious. I don't need to say any more." "Just say it." "Young hero, do you want to join the sect?" "Yes." In a chapter, Omega. Chapter 209. Bane straightforwardly agreed to Lei Sei's invitation to join the Red Dragon sect. It could even be said to be somewhat abrupt. However, this was not a rash decision. Instead, it was a decision he made after careful consideration. Firstly, Xiao Chun came to the Divine Dragon Empire to gather information for Jilin. However, he was unfamiliar with the place and the people. This matter would not go smoothly at the start. As for the Red Dragon sect, it looked like it already had deep roots in the Divine Dragon Empire. Its information resources were very impressive. The Red Dragon sect could even accurately grasp the movements of the Dragon Knights. Knowing oneself and the enemy to this extent, their strength was clear. Without a doubt, joining the Red Dragon sect would help Shao Chun in gathering information on the Elf Island. Secondly, Bane could not stand the Divine Dragon Empire's way of treating human lives like grass. These people clearly looked like normal, good people. However, they were labeled as evil cult members for no reason. Yet, the Empire was going to slaughter such innocent people. Such logic did not make sense in the world. Lacey looked at Bane and blinked, not knowing what to say. "What's wrong?" Bane asked. "It's nothing. It's just that you suddenly agreed so straightforwardly. This somewhat exceeded my expectations. Are you worried that I have ulterior motives?" "That's not it. I just find it somewhat hard to figure you out. However, it's fine. After all, you saved me and so many of the sect members. I'm still willing to trust you. After all, there are many people of unknown origins in my Red Dragon sect. Are you not afraid that I will harm you? In the end, you are alone. You should say the opposite." "That's true. Welcome to the sect. You are too polite, too polite." 1 year later, Auspicious Cloud City. Auspicious Cloud City was a small, unknown town at the border of the Divine Dragon Empire. It was located in the southeast of the Divine Dragon Empire, near the sea. There were few people here, so the scenery was pleasant. It was quiet but not desolate. Occasionally, 2 seagulls would fly over Auspicious Cloud City under the clear blue sky and white clouds. It was a scene of a paradise. This might be the Divine Dragon Empire's unique charm, preserving the natural environment's beauty to the greatest extent. In a tea house in Ruyan City, Bane was standing on an antique bench with 1 foot on it. He was drinking tea, cracking melon seeds, and listening to a storyteller. Melon seed shells flew out of his mouth, and his smug expression made him look like a hooligan. Even if the people around him were pointing at him, he didn't care. Instead, he raised his eyebrows and glared at her provocatively. After listening for a while, Bane felt that this storyteller should have come from the Middle Empire. After all, there were no storytellers in the Divine Dragon Empire. It was impossible for anyone to tell this story in such an authentic manner, with both spirit and form. It was exactly the same as what he had heard in the capital. That year, an enemy army attacked from the south. The banners covered the sun, and the momentum was extremely great. Just as everyone was frowning and feeling helpless, the Sword Saint guy, Mingyue, silently appeared in front of the enemy army without anyone noticing. The Sword Saint drew out flowing light, and a sword light suddenly appeared between heaven and earth. The light was so bright that people couldn't open their eyes. The Sword Saint immediately shouted, "The Sword Saint guy Mingyue is here. Who dares to take a step forward?" Everyone, guess what happened next? That million-strong army, actually. Bane picked up his teacup, took a sip, and smacked his lips twice. He was familiar with this story. This time, it was the story of the Sword Saint blocking a million-strong army with 1 sword. However, according to the Sword Saint himself, this was pure nonsense. Continuing from the previous story, on this day, the Sword Saint guy Mingyue met with the 5 great demon kings, the 9 mountain kings, and the 4 great. Bane nodded and spat out the melon seed, rind in his mouth onto the ground, causing countless people to roll their eyes. He had also heard this story before. It was about how the Sword Saint killed 18 evil people with 1 sword, and from then on, the Middle Empire became peaceful and peaceful. Although he didn't know how the Sword Saint killed 18 people with 1 sword, since there was such a story, then he would just treat it as if it was true. "Brother, is this seat taken?" Just when Bane had heard 2 or 3 parts of the story, a middle-aged man wearing a white robe with an elegant temperament walked in front of him and pointed at the lunatic that Bane was stepping on with his foot and asked politely. Bane didn't answer immediately, but first looked around the tea house, then glanced at the middle-aged man and said, "There are so many empty seats, and you insist on taking this one?" The middle-aged man smiled, but didn't say anything. Bane remained silent for a while before nodding. Then, He retracted his foot and sat up straight. "Please sit." The middle-aged man smiled faintly and sat down without even wiping the stool. Then, he poured himself a cup of tea without standing on ceremony. After slowly taking a sip, he asked Bane, "Is this storyteller good?" Bane thought to himself, "You sat down for so long and didn't say anything. All you did was spout some nonsense. You are really good at showing off." "It's pretty good. I didn't expect to hear such an authentic storytelling in an inconspicuous city in the divine Dragon Empire," Bane said with a smile. "That's good. I didn't waste a lot of effort to invite this person over," the man said with a smile. "Oh, that means you found this storyteller just for me?" "That's right. You knew that I was coming." "That's right. You know who I am?" "Of course. It has been less than a year since you joined the Red Dragon Church, but you have already made a name for yourself as Hidden Shadow. Your name has spread far and wide, reverberating like thunder in the ears." "Hidden Shadow?" Bane felt stunned for a moment. "It means the shadow of the specter. It praises you for appearing and disappearing unpredictably, being extremely sinister." Bane quickly waved his hand and said, "You praise me too much. I'm not worthy of it. I'm not worthy of it." No, no, no. You are more than worthy of it. You deserve it. Ha ha ha. You're too polite. May I ask who you are?" "Auspicious Cloud City's City Lord, Geraint. It's an honor to meet you at last." Bane showed an exaggerated expression of shock as he performed a cupped fist salute to Geraint. "It looks like you recognized me long ago. Come, Lord City Lord. Don't stand on ceremony." Bane grabbed a handful of sunflower seeds and handed them to Geraint. "How did you recognize me?" Geraint asked. "It is Lord City Lord. It is not difficult to get a portrait of you. Since I am in your territory, I should recognize you," Bane said nonchalantly. "How did you recognize me?" Geraint pointed at his eyebrows. Bane paused and was silent for a moment. After a year, there was a clear scar of half a finger's length above his left eyebrow. It was a scar left behind in a crucial battle. At that time, he was fighting a mid-tier 4th-stage enemy with his mid-tier 3rd-stage strength. In the end, Bane used the Sword of No Return, charging forward with no regard for his own safety and risking his life to attack. He succeeded in killing the enemy. However, the enemy gave him a back-handed slash before he died, leaving this scar behind. When Bane used No Return, he did not have the ability to defend against the enemy's attack. Every time Bane thought of this, he could not help but feel a lingering fear, because if that slash had been slightly lower, his left eye would have been gone. However, Bane felt that this scar was worth it, because after that battle, he could be considered to have truly entered the inner circle of the Red Dragon sect and gained fame in the Divine Dragon Empire. However, there was also a bad point. That was from that day onwards, he had to go to his secret location with Riser one day every week. Sometimes it was a dark room, sometimes it was a cave. Usually, a large number of Red Dragon sect members gathered there. It was nothing much. The main thing was to exchange pleasantries. Then, everyone would kowtow to Jilin's portrait. This chapter ends. Chapter 210. Every time Bane kowtowed to Jilin's portrait, he would feel very awkward. However, since everyone else was kowtowing sincerely, he could not do anything about it. He did not know how the Red Dragon Society obtained a portrait of Jilin's true body. In any case, it was impossible for them to have drawn it based on the flying dragons. There is a huge difference between the two that could be seen at a glance. However, since the Red Dragon Society's members claimed that Flay was their society master, she must have drawn herself. She had seen Jilin before. "Your Excellency Shadow, you are not from the Divine Dragon Empire, right?" Geraint asked as he looked at Bane, pulling him back from his thoughts. "That's right. Since you are not, why get involved in this mess? Is it worth it to take the risk? The Emperor is tyrannical, and the commoners have no way to make a living. Everyone has a responsibility," Bane said. "Rueyun City's commoners all live and work in peace and contentment. The people here cannot represent everyone." "What are you trying to do?" Geraint said. "Normally, Your Excellency never shows yourself. Even if the Red Dragon Society does something major, you hide in the shadows and give advice. What is going on this time?" "Your Excellency, took the initiative to sit with me. Aren't you afraid that I will kill you on the spot? Of course I am. Bane smiled. According to Dragon Ear's information, you've already reached the 5th step 20 years ago, not to mention that you monopolized such a city. After so many years, I don't believe that you haven't reached the 6th step. However, since I dared to appear here, I am naturally not afraid of you. As soon as Bane finished speaking, a man in a red robe walked to his side. The Red Dragon Society's Red Robe Bishop? Geraint asked. If you can get a Red Robe Bishop to protect you, it seems that your position in the Red Dragon Society is quite high. You must be joking, Bane said with a smile. Even if you are prepared, this is still my city, Geraint said seriously as he looked at Bane. Geraint calmly picked up his teacup and took a sip, sitting down calmly. However, the other people in the shop suddenly stood up with shiny weapons in their hands. Nobody knew where they came from. Even the storyteller stopped telling the story. Instead, he gently waved his fan and walked to Geraint's side. He cupped his hands and greeted Geraint. Geraint also nodded at him. This storyteller is not simple. The red-robed man's soft voice fell into Bane's ears. This was an advanced telepathic technique that the Red Dragon sect had specially researched to deal with the flying dragon's hearing. Bane could not help but roll his eyes at the red-robed man. As long as one wasn't blind, they would be able to tell that he wasn't simple. The others only stood up and took out their weapons. Only he was scurrying around. How could this be simple? This person is probably at the 6th stage. The red-robed man whispered again. Bane's mouth suddenly stiffened. He looked at Geraint and said with a wry smile, "The Castellan is so generous to actually be able to let such a 6th-stage expert hide in auspicious Cloud City without making a name for himself." Even the dragon's eyes were hidden. Oh, Geraint seemed to have a profound meaning. So the Red Dragon sect has a complete intelligence system. Is it divided into dragon's ears and dragon's eyes? Bane smiled but did not answer. His smiling face looked unfathomable and unfathomable. In fact, those two eyes were rapidly turning in his narrowed eyes. He had miscalculated. He thought that Geraint was the only 6th-stage expert in auspicious Cloud City. But this sudden addition was enough to make all of Bane's following plans futile. But there was nothing he could do about it. Who would have thought that a Castellan with a 6th-stage cultivation base could invite a 6th-stage expert as a helper and let him tell a story in this tea house? A 6th-stage expert, even in the Empire, was enough to become the master of a region and control the people of a region. They were usually very arrogant. How could they break their character and do this job for Geraint? However, since the matter had already happened, it was useless to think about it here. It was better to think of a way out. Since he could not defeat him, he could either use his wits, feign civility, or surrender. Bane made up his mind and said with a smile, "The auspicious Cloud City Lord has made such ample preparations to welcome us. It seems like the auspicious Cloud City Lord is really facing our Red Dragon sect as a great enemy. Of course, your Red Dragon sect is delusional enough to overturn the universe. I have received great kindness from His Majesty, the Hero King. Naturally, we cannot live under the same sky." Geraint was calm. Now that the situation was under his control, this shadow that had been a headache for the Empire for a long time would not be able to escape. He was willing to chat with the other party for a while. This was the calmness of a victor. "I don't think so." Bane shook his head solemnly. "You and I don't necessarily need to fight to the death between us. Lord City Lord, do you know how many cities in the Divine Dragon Empire are under the secret control of the Red Dragon sect?" "HM, that's impossible." A bright light flashed in Geraint's eyes. He had never heard of this before. If what Bane said was true, then it would be too terrifying. Any city with a population of more than 10,000 can contact Divine Dragon City directly. This is especially so for the border cities. If they discover any trouble, they can even request reinforcements from the Dragon Knights. How can they be controlled by evil sect demons like you? Stop spouting nonsense. Lord City Lord is right. Bane nodded and said, "Under normal circumstances, no one can occupy the Divine Dragon Empire cities. Even our church master, the legendary expert Flay, cannot do it. This is because the Dragon Knights might covers the entire divine dragon empire. However, what if those city lords are also our people? Naturally, we can take control of the cities without anyone knowing. Lord, do you know how many city lords like you believe in the red dragon god? And how many city lords were directly planted by our red dragon sect? What do you mean? Geraint said gloomily. It's very simple. Now, the hero king is old and muddle-headed. He massacred villages at the divine dragon empire's borders. He viewed human lives as worthless. Although there was a saying, if the monarch wants the subject to die, the subject has no choice but to die. However, this was not the way to die. If this continued, the hero king would definitely be abandoned and suffer the wrath of the heavens. Lord City Lord, you're a heroic figure. Even our church master has heard of your reputation and thinks highly of you. I believe that Lord City Lord will understand what I am saying after thinking for a while. Since that is the case, why don't Lord City Lord abandon the darkness and join the light? If you follow the will of heaven, it will be the fortune of the world. Bane spoke very quickly, not giving Geraint any time to react. Geraint only understood what Bane said after a while. Oh, Geraint nodded. From what your excellency Shadow said, you want to rope me in? Join the demonic dragon sect. The red dragon sect, Bane corrected. Huh? Geraint suddenly laughed loudly. Lord City Lord, why are you laughing? Bane asked helplessly when he saw Geraint laughing so exaggeratedly. It was obvious that Geraint was waiting for him to ask a question. I have heard of your deeds. You once led 800 red dragons to attack the granary of Snow City and then helped the disaster victims nearby. You once used a scheme to kill 3 rank 5 knights of my divine dragon empire. The rarest thing is that you have the strength to fight above your level. You once killed a rank 4 expert with your rank 3 strength. I thought that a person like you would be extremely smart. However, I did not expect that you're also a self-deceiver. What do you mean? Bang! Geraint slammed the table hard and shouted angrily. His voice seemed to be squeezed out from between his teeth. Do you really think that the red dragon you worship will protect humans? You believe in him, but he might only see you as stubborn stones and weeds. How can you believe in such a god? Bane opened his mouth, but did not say anything. He did not expect the Rue Cloud City Lord's question to be so sharp and to the core. This was the question that had been bothering him the whole time. Why did the Red Dragon Church worship that fellow? People believed in the Earth God, hoping to obtain the Earth God's protection to ensure a good harvest in the coming year. Staya believed in the God of Light, so naturally, she hoped that the light could dispel the darkness and fill the world with light. Aisha believed in the God of Darkness because she felt that the darkness contained all truth, the truth of the world. However, why did the Divine Dragon Empire's people believe in such a thing? Or rather, if humans believed in gods, it was to put a trace of light in this world filled with darkness. It was to find some hope in the face of absolute despair. In that case, how dark and despairing was this person from the Divine Dragon Empire living? How desperate was he to resort to such desperate measures? They believed in Jilin, a dragon that only knew how to kill and burn. Occasionally, he was sentimental, did things as he pleased, did not care about the consequences, and did not have a trace of compassion. Bane felt stunned for a long time. Finally, he sighed and looked at Geraint. He said indifferently, "All gods are the same when it comes to treating humans as stubborn stones and weeds." As for other things, he could not say anything more on behalf of Jilin. "Is that all you want to say?" Geraint asked. "There's one more thing. Please, can I surrender?" Geraint blinked in shock. "You'd better surrender. Don't ruin the great name of Shadow. TSK. It looks like it won't work. If possible, I really do not want to use this thing. In that case, Rue Cloud City Lord, I will take my leave first. I'll look forward to our next meeting." Chapter 211. Geraint looked at Bane, and the first thought that came to his mind was, this person is crazy. But in the next moment, he overturned his thoughts. Although Shadow's name had only appeared in the Divine Dragon Empire not long ago, everyone knew that he could not be underestimated. It was impossible for him to be such a despicable person. Haha, Your Excellency Shadow must be joking. Now that you're surrounded, there's no way out. How will you meet me next time? Geraint said with a smile. However, what was hidden under his smile was a pair of eagle-like eyes that stared at Bane's every move. Like I said earlier, since I dare to come and see you, I'm naturally fully prepared. As for what I said just now, please consider it carefully, Ruiyun City Lord. The door of the Red Dragon sect will always be open for you. As soon as Bane finished speaking, a purple light quietly appeared under him. Geraint's eyes widened when he saw this, but his pupils shrank to the size of a needle's eye. Teleportation array? As soon as Geraint realized that something was wrong, he immediately stood up and threw a punch at Bane. The extremely turbulent fist wind directly overturned the table in front of him and the floor under the table, whistling toward Bane. His reaction was not slow, but he was still one step too slow. With a flash of purple light, Bane and the red-robed man disappeared without a trace. The powerful fist wind hit empty air and made a hole in the tea house's outer wall with a loud bang. Teleportation array, Geraint said. When did he draw it? I've never heard of Shadow knowing how to teleport. He didn't draw it. The storyteller shook his head slightly. Before he came, he checked everywhere in this tea house, afraid that he had tampered with it in advance. Moreover, I've been watching him since he came in. It's impossible for him to draw a teleportation array under my nose. It should be a magic crystal or a scroll. How is this possible? He's only grade 3 or 4, and all the scrolls with teleportation magic inscribed on them are extremely expensive. Even I, the city lord, don't have one. Geraint said. I don't know, the storyteller said. The storyteller said, however, since he used such an expensive teleportation array scroll and paid such a huge price, he definitely won't let the matter rest. We should make preparations early, City Lord. Yeah. Outside of auspicious Cloud City, there was a secluded valley, and inside the valley was a hidden cave. Cough, cough, cough. Suddenly, a burst of violent coughing sounded out in the wilderness, startling countless birds. Not long after, 2 figures crawled out of the cave in a sorry state. They were Bane and the Red-Robe Man. Bane used all 4 of his limbs to crawl out while coughing from time to time. It turned out that he was the one who had coughed. Geraint's punch just now had hurt him after all. Bane crawled out of the cave with great difficulty. He glanced at the sky and collapsed to the ground as if he had lost all his strength. Covering his chest with his hand, he could not help but feel a burst of fear. He did not expect the strength of a 6-stage powerhouse to be so terrifying. He was also someone who was about to enter the 4th stage, but he could not even take half a punch from him. The punch just now had only brushed against him, and he was injured to the point of coughing up blood. This was really a case of getting hurt by a scratch and dying by a touch. Just as Bane was panting and recovering, the red-robed man crawled out and grabbed Bane's collar. He took off his hood, revealing a fair face. It was Reese, who had accompanied Bane for a year. Why did you put the teleportation array in such a place? This is so depressing, like a thief. It's better than coming out and finding enemies all around, Bane said. Is it exciting? Reese questioned Bane as soon as he came out and then scolded him. Look at you, are you crazy? You found a red-robed man and asked me to pretend to be a red-robed bishop? Even if you were bluffing, this is too King fake. I've seen dogs pretending to be wolves and little frogs pretending to be toads, but I've never seen a cat pretending to be a tiger or an ant pretending to be an elephant. What were you thinking? Ahem. Bane coughed lightly. If you don't even dare to think about it, the enemy wouldn't believe that we would dare to do it. So, you weren't seen through. Moreover, Ruiyun City Lord even exposed a storyteller for a fake red-robed bishop like you. It's worth it. Worth your ass. Reese roared. Do you know? Sometimes I think you're crazy. Who would be like you, facing a 6-stage powerhouse as a 3rd-stage powerhouse just to figure out the enemy's strength? Most importantly, you don't care at all. Do you know how big the gap between a 3rd stage and a 6-stage powerhouse is? I know. Bane wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, thinking that he had only just found out. Previously, when he plotted against those powerhouses, he didn't have to face them directly, so it was needless to say. However, when he followed Jilin all this time, he really didn't feel that the difference between a Tier 3 and a Tier 6 was that big. Forget about a 6-stage powerhouse. Even an 8-stage powerhouse would be the same. They were all ants and weeds, and Jilin could kill them with a flick of his finger. At that time, he really couldn't tell the difference between a 3rd stage and an 8-stage powerhouse. He had dug his own grave. But I really admire your fearless personality. Not to mention that you can think of such a crazy idea. Just the fact that you can speak so confidently in the face of a 6-stage powerhouse shows that you're not an ordinary person. Reese said. Bane looked at him and smiled without saying a word. He thought to himself, this is nothing. This is just a small matter. Thinking back to when I was in the Snow Wind Empire's mobile city and was watched by 5 legendary powerhouses, I didn't even bat an eyelid when I stabbed the Emperor in the Middle Empire. My hand didn't even tremble. But why do you insist on this auspicious cloud city? This city is remote and doesn't have any rare resources. Our Red Dragon sect doesn't really need it. Reese changed the topic and finally asked the real question in his heart. I say, don't lie to me. You have to know that I'm risking my life to accompany you this time. I know. Bane facepalmed. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly stopped. What's wrong? Say something? Reese said, there are definitely benefits to taking down auspicious Cloud City. Otherwise, the higher-ups wouldn't have given me this power to support this operation. If you want to listen to these, I can casually give you 1, 2, 3, and so on. Bane said, however, those are actually incidental and not my true intentions. I can't tell you my intentions, and I don't want to lie to you, so... Bane didn't say anything else, but his meaning was clear. Reese quietly looked at Bane for a while, then slowly nodded and didn't ask any more questions. Seeing Reese like this, Bane inwardly heaved a sigh of relief. If Reese had insisted on asking, he really wouldn't know what to say. He couldn't possibly say that he was sent by the Red Dragon sect, and that he was actually here to scout for information. As for why he insisted on taking down auspicious Cloud City, it was completely because of those baseless and untrustworthy legends that he had scouted out. When Bane wanted to use the Red Dragon sect's intelligence system to scout for information about the Elven Island, he didn't expect things to be so simple. As a result, he didn't even need to use the Red Dragon sect's intelligence. He originally thought that it was top-secret information that few people knew, but he didn't expect the legends of the Elven Island to be so widespread in the Divine Dragon Empire. It had already reached the point where everyone knew about it by word of mouth. Bane only needed to use the intelligence system to sort out a little and obtain a set of information about the Elven Island. The information was both complicated and complete, chaotic and logical, general and full of details. It was like a fairy tale from the Middle Empire. In that information, the Elven Island was a mysterious island hidden in the depths of the sea. Humans couldn't find it at all. Even if you passed by it, you wouldn't discover its existence. It was said that only the chosen ones, the extremely lucky ones, and those invited by the Elven Queen could enter the Elven Island. However, the Divine Dragon Empire had been established since the mythological era and had been passed down for more than 1,000 years. During such a long time, there would always be a few lucky ones who successfully entered the Elven Island. They were the ones who brought out the legends of the Elven Island. These legends were very strange and conflicted with each other. Legend had it that there was a fog on the Elven Island that didn't dissipate all year round. Even birds would get lost in it. Legend had it that there was a lake on the Elven Island. The lake's surface was as flat as a mirror. No matter how strong the wind was, it wouldn't cause any ripples. Legend had it that the previous 2 legends were nonsense. There was no lake or fog on the Elven Island. Therefore, Bane had a headache when he read this information. However, there were 3 similarities between these legends. Firstly, the Elven race didn't age or die. Bane felt that this was worth discussing. Secondly, the Elven Queen had unparalleled beauty. She was the embodiment of all the beauties in the world. Those who hadn't seen it with their own eyes wouldn't be able to imagine it. Regarding this point, Bane felt that it would be great if it was true. Thirdly, those who had been to the Elven Island all went out to sea from auspicious Cloud City. Bane felt that if this wasn't true, then this piece of information wouldn't be of any value. Therefore, He had to obtain auspicious Cloud City. Even if it was fake, he had to treat it as real. Chapter 2:12. In a hidden underground space, a group of people dressed in red robes stood in a circle around a shabby wooden table. The flickering candle flame flickered between bright and dark. Hidden Shadow stood in the circle and turned his head to look at his church members. He discovered that he could not see anyone's face clearly. Everyone, we are all on the same side. There is no need to cover ourselves so tightly, right? Hidden Shadow said with a bitter smile. Hidden Shadow, you have only been in the church for a short time. There are some things that you do not know. In short, the Divine Dragon Empire hates us to the bone. That's right. That's right. All right then. Hidden Shadow nodded and did not insist. In that case, let's talk about the detailed plan to occupy Reunion City. Wait a moment. A gloomy voice suddenly rang out. Hidden Shadow looked up, thinking, I told you to take off your hats, but you didn't. How am I supposed to know who said that? You said earlier that you want to occupy Reunion City, not control it in secret. Clearly, the owner of the voice did not care if the other party looked directly at him when he spoke. Hidden Shadow's eyes flashed. This person is not simple. To think that this person immediately discovered the hidden meaning in my words. However, since this person already discovered it, I might as well say it directly. In any case, I have to let them know sooner or later. That's right. I want to occupy it, Hidden Shadow said firmly. I want to raise the red dragon flag on Ruiyun City's city gate tower. I want to let everyone know that Ruiyun City belongs to the Red Dragon Church. Crazy. Hidden Shadow, you crazy. Ridiculous. The scene suddenly became noisy, and there was even a faintly indignant posture. Since the higher-ups put such a whimsical lunatic in charge of this operation, these red-robed people could not help but feel a little guilty. Why is it ridiculous? Hidden Shadow shouted. Everyone was stunned, to the extent that the originally noisy scene actually became silent for a moment. At this moment, everyone had the same thought. Not only is this person crazy, but he is also stupid. Why is it ridiculous? A shrill voice rang out, filled with disbelief. My Red Dragon Church is very strong in the Divine Dragon Empire. However, why do we not have a fixed territory? Don't you know that? I know you once stayed in the Middle Empire, where a few dozen bandits could take over a mountain. However, who would dare to do that in the Divine Dragon Empire? Because of the Dragon Knights? Ewing faintly said. His voice suddenly became extremely cold, and those who heard it couldn't help but shiver. You already know the answer. That's how the Divine Dragon Empire is. All these years, no organization has ever dared to stand up against the Empire in public. At most, they just play some tricks in the dark. That's right. If you dare to plant a flag in the Divine Dragon Empire, a flying dragon will ride on your face in the next moment. Then, it will spit out a fireball and fly away without looking back. The red-robed people were all criticizing Shadow for his whimsical plan. If we always fear the power of the Dragon Knights, then we will always live under the shadow of the flying dragons, never to see the light of day. The Red Dragon sect will never rise again. If we can't stand up, then the people who have been treated unfairly by the Empire will never be able to stand up. Those believers of the Red Dragon God will never be able to stand under the sun. Is this what we want? We are believers of the Red Dragon God. Under the guidance of the Red Dragon God, we will spread the holy flames throughout the world. We will purge the world and make it fair. Isn't this what we believe in? We have lofty beliefs and ideals, and we are heroic and heroic. However, now, all of you are afraid of the mere Dragon Knights. This is simply detestable. Although I have to die 9 times, I do not regret it. Everyone will die one day. It might be as light as a feather or as heavy as Mount Tai. Even if there are millions of people, I will still press forward. These generous words of the Middle Empire are widely spread throughout the continent. Have you not heard of them? We want to take down auspicious Cloud City. We want to plant the Red Dragon flag at the highest point of auspicious Cloud City. We want to tell those unfortunate people and all the Red Dragon sect believers that we are here. The Red Dragon God is here. Hope is here. Yu Ying's words were impassioned and powerful. Clearly, They stunned the red-robed people with higher cultivations than Ewing. Ewing glanced around. Everyone who met his gaze couldn't help but lower their heads. Ewing didn't think that there would be a day where he would stand in the middle of a group of believers and say things that even he didn't believe in, preaching and brainwashing them. Fortunately, when Staya was teaching Jalen, he was curious and listened for a while. Even though he was merely imitating Stee and could not match up to 10% of what Stee had done, it seemed to be enough. The red-robed people thought carefully and found that although Ewing said a lot, it was useless. However, they couldn't refute him. As Red Dragon sect believers, they didn't have the right to refute those words. I admit that what you said is very reasonable. However, we can't just die for nothing because of this, right? A low voice sounded. He didn't seem to have much confidence. Once we raise the red dragon flag in auspicious Cloud City, the Dragon Knights will definitely come immediately. At that time, the city will be destroyed and people will die, not to mention any hope. Ewing raised his head in surprise. He didn't expect that there would be someone with such a clear mind among these religious believers. How strange. Therefore, occupying auspicious Cloud City is only the first step, Ewing said calmly. Not only do we have to occupy auspicious Cloud City, but we also have to stand there, so that the Divine Dragon Empire won't dare to rashly invade us in the future. Let auspicious Cloud City become our teaching platform. That sounds good. I think you are really crazy. That's right. In the words of the Middle Empire, isn't this an uprising? Faith, he said again. Ewing raised his hand indifferently and suppressed these voices. I heard such a story in the Middle Empire. Ewing said with a smile. The royal family of the Middle Empire had the world's #1 treasured sword. The Golden King was very proud and often took it out to show off to the other emperors. He would ask everyone he met, "My treasured sword is the world's #1 divine sword, indestructible and incomparably sturdy. Who in the world can compete with it?" Although the other emperors were angry, they were also afraid of the divine might of the treasured sword. Therefore, they let the Golden King take the limelight. Therefore, the Golden King became even more proud. He often used that sword to show off and show off. However, one day, the Golden King suddenly knew that the sword might break. Therefore, he hid the sword deep in the palace and didn't dare to show it to others easily. Although the story is a bit messy, it's nothing. What do you mean? Why do the Dragon Knights of the Divine Dragon Empire dare to fly everywhere? Why would the Dragon Knights be dispatched for such a trivial matter? It's because the Emperor thinks that the Dragon Knights are invincible, just like the sword at the beginning of the story. Since nothing can destroy that sword, the Golden King naturally dares to show off everywhere he goes. The Hero King thinks that the Dragon Knights are invincible in the Divine Dragon Empire, so he naturally dares to let those flying dragons fly everywhere. You mean, if the Dragon Knights are no longer absolutely safe in the Divine Dragon Empire, then the Hero King will naturally think twice before sending out the Dragon Knights in the future. He won't use them so easily. In the words of the Middle Empire, this is called an important weapon of the country and can't be used lightly. So, what do you mean, let's kill a Dragon Knight and broaden the Hero King's knowledge? Huh. Chapter 213. After the that represented endless shock, the entire underground space fell into a deathly silence. What do you think? Shadow waited for a while, but no one spoke, so he asked himself, killing a Dragon Knight. Not bad. Not bad. A red-robed man's voice was small, stuttering like a mosquito. He looked like he had no idea and even looked back and forth a few times, but at this time, no one paid attention to him, so it was very awkward. Not bad, my ass. Shadow, who was the one who pulled him into the sect? A red-robed man shouted at his companions around him. It seems to be Reese. Nonsense. Reese has always done things steadily. How could he find a madman to join his sect? You, a Tier 3 thief, dare to have such thoughts. That's a Dragon Knight. So what if it's a Dragon Knight? Is it necessary? Shadow asked back. Huh. Shameless boasting. If you want to die, then go yourself. Don't drag others down with you. That's right. Those Dragon Knights are all absolute powerhouses above Tier 8, and there are even Tier 9 characters who are as high as the clouds. Not to mention that they can cooperate with the wyverns and exert strength far beyond their own. Do you think you can figure it out so easily? You're boosting the morale of others and diminishing your own. Shadow said indifferently, "We haven't even fought yet, and you're already scaring yourselves. How can you lose in terms of momentum?" Shadow, I've worked with you before, and I know you're not as crazy and whimsical as the rumors say. I know you're a smart person with rational thoughts. So, since you came up with this crazy plan, you must have a way, tell me. You can't be asking us to use our lives to exhaust the Dragon Knights, right? Shadow looked at the slightly shaking brim of his hat and couldn't remember who this person was at all. Indeed, I know. Although the Dragon Knights aren't invincible enemies, they're not something we can easily take down, Shadow said. Suddenly, there was a sound of cold air being sucked in from all around. The red-robed men didn't understand why this person with only Tier 3 cultivation was always so arrogant. Listening to his words, it seemed that he didn't take the Dragon Knights seriously. What did he mean by not easy to take down? Does that mean you just have to work harder? Dragon Knights have extremely strong individual combat capabilities. Usually, a person or a dragon could be used as an army. Moreover, it is very agile and can reach any place in the Divine Dragon Empire within a day. Ewing said, "We know these things better than you do." "Oh, really?" Dark Shadow said, "Since that is the case, why didn't you think about it? The Dragon Knights are so strong and hard to control. They will definitely be feared by the current dynasty. It is impossible for the Divine Dragon Empire not to have any means to restrict them." Nonsense. For thousands of years, the Dragon Knights had never betrayed the Divine Dragon Empire. They had always been loyal. How could the Divine Dragon Empire have? It's not about whether they want to, but whether they can. As long as it's possible, the Emperor will definitely be on guard. This may seem overly suspicious to us, but in the Emperor's eyes, it's called being prepared for nothing. Empty words. Do you have any evidence? Previously, I received news that every city of certain size in the Divine Dragon Empire has a space freezing formation. Flying in the space freezing formation will be very difficult, facing strong resistance. That is not enough. Even if the Dragon Knights stand there and let us attack them, we might not be able to injure them. The strength of a rank 8 expert is not something that you and I can easily estimate. Naturally, the Divine Dragon Empire prepared more than that for the Dragon Knights. You already said that this is the Divine Dragon Empire's backup. How can we use it? People forge swords, but swords do not recognize people. Many swordsmiths have died to the swords they forged themselves. It mainly depends on who is holding the sword hilt. Are the people of the Middle Empire all so vague and pretentious? Then what is a sword hilt? Naturally, it is the city lord's token that can command all city defense weapons. So that is the case. If that is the case, it is indeed feasible. That's right. If we can get a Dragon Knight to fall without relying on Sect Masterflay strength, we can indeed start a change in the Divine Dragon Empire that has not happened in the past 1,000 years. In the future, the Divine Dragon Empire will be restricted when sending out Dragon Knights. In that case, the remaining problem is how to occupy Auspicious Cloud City and obtain the City Lord's token before the Dragon Knights arrive. Furthermore, it would be best if we could not attract more than one Dragon Knight. In that case, this will be somewhat troublesome. After we occupy Auspicious Cloud City, we need to pretend that both sides have suffered losses, but in reality, we won by a narrow margin. Only then will the Divine Dragon Empire think that a single Dragon Knight can easily annihilate us. This is not easy to grasp. As Dark Shadow listened to the crimson-robed men's discussions, an incredibly sinister smile appeared on his face. Everyone, it is not that this humble one's words are unpleasant. However, there are simply too many uncertainties in your plan. No matter how you look at it, it is not reliable. Everyone's lives depend on this. How can you take such a huge risk? When the crimson-robed men heard Dark Shadow's words, they felt a nameless rage burn in their chests. Truly, anger rose in their chests, and evil grew in their guts. They were so angry that they could not say anything. They were just short of directly attacking. You're still being cautious at this time. Aren't you the one who wants to seize the city and kill the Dragon Knights? Good. Tell me, how should we deal with this matter? A crimson-robed man said while panting. It was obvious that he had just suppressed his anger. He was not even panting yet. There is a heaven-sent opportunity right before our eyes. Why are you all ignoring it? Dark Shadow asked, somewhat puzzled. The crimson-robed men looked at each other before looking back at Dark Shadow. It's the tide, Dark Shadow shouted with an expression full of resentment. Tide! Tide! You want to take advantage of the tide? Despicable and shameless. Cries of surprise rang out one after another. It seemed that the crimson-robed men found it hard to believe what they had just heard. Dark Shadow felt that the crimson-robed men's reactions were somewhat strange. Moreover, it seemed that someone had taken advantage of the chaos to curse him. However, that was not the main point. What's wrong with the tide? Dark Shadow asked. Why are you all so excited? Do you know what tide is? The so-called tide? I know, Dark Shadow said confidently. The so-called tide is when an ocean current will appear in the endless ocean every summer and last for a month. This ocean current will appear from the depths of the endless ocean and flow toward the divine Dragon Empire's eastern shore. Every year, the oceanic race of the endless ocean will ride this ocean current and follow it to attack the land. Rumor has it that the oceanic race is incomparably cruel and bloodthirsty. No human who falls into their hands has a complete corpse. Therefore, the divine Dragon Empire specially built the world's #1 pass on the eastern shore, Calm Wind Pass, to defend against the oceanic race. Every year at this time, the Dragon Knights will go all out to defend against the oceanic race. With the innate advantage of the flying dragons, they will be the main fighting force against the oceanic race. Since you know this, you should also know that the tide is related to all lives in the world. Once Calm Wind Pass falls, at best, all lives will be plunged into misery and suffering. At worst, the entire eastern part of the divine Dragon Empire will become a living hell. How can you? It is precisely because of this that we must take action during the tide. At this time, the divine Dragon Empire does not have any extra Dragon Knights to trouble us, Hidden Shadow said. If it were a few years ago, that might not be the case. However, I am absolutely confident because the divine Dragon Empire lost half of its Dragon Knights a few years ago, right? No way. If we take action during the tide, we will be despised by the entire divine Dragon Empire. This is risking the lives of all the divine Dragon Empire citizens. Too selfish, too despicable. Hidden Shadow, you truly live up to your reputation of being sinister. This is too crazy. Hidden Shadow blinked hard and looked around. If not for the people around him wearing red robes, he would have thought that he was participating in the Church of Light's assembly. Do these evil cult sorcerers understand their position? Who do they think they are? The savior of the world? Do you really believe in Jilin, the red dragon god, who kills people without batting an eyelid and will not wait for more than 2 minutes? Are you believing in the wrong cult? I'm familiar with the Saint of Light. If you want to join the Church of Light, I will help you talk to her. Style will definitely look at you in a different light since you are so worried about the country and the people. Oh, Style can't see now. Hidden Shadow's heart was in a mess as he wailed silently. However, the expression on his face was as calm as the wind and clouds. No one could tell that there was any change in him. The simple young man who used to live in a remote village in the Saimai Empire had now become expressionless. It was somewhat unfathomable. Chapter 214. At the Divine Dragon Empire's eastern shore, Calm Wind Pass. Calm Wind Pass was truly the most impregnable pass in the world. This was because the other passes would at most face groups of cavalry or countless siege weapons. What Calm Wind Pass had to face was the raging waves of the endless sea, as well as the extremely savage sea tribe, who were as numerous as sand in the sea. The Divine Dragon Empire had no choice but to go all out. Calm Wind Pass was hundreds of meters tall. It was connected to cliffs from east to west. The outer walls were as smooth as a mirror without any protrusions. The strangest thing was that Calm Wind Pass did not have a city gate. Rather than calling it a pass, it was more like a city wall. However, The people of the world believed it to be the most impregnable pass in the world only because the divine dragon empire had carved the words Calm Wind Pass on it. Calm Wind Pass was a sign of peace. Calm Wind Pass's garrison commander, Boros, reclined on a recliner, revealing his muscular upper body under the scorching sun. Boros grabbed the wine flask beside him and took a big gulp. Then, he let out a long sigh. It sounded exceptionally comfortable. However, in his right eye, there was a haze called worry that didn't disperse for a long time. Boros gently moved his palm as if he was caressing the wind. The hot and humid sea breeze passed through his palm, telling him a clear message: summer was here. The tide was about to rise. "General," a soldier ran over to Boros and quickly performed a cupped fist salute. "General, the king's orders have arrived." Boros glanced at that soldier indifferently. The soldier looked like he had been pricked. He quickly lowered his head and muttered to himself. His general's face was simply too scary. Even though he had been at Calm Wind Pass for a long time, he still could not get used to it. Boros's face originally looked very manly. He had a squarish face and regular facial features. After being stationed at Calm Wind Pass for so long and being exposed to the scorching sun, his complexion turned dark, making him look very righteous. Coupled with his muscular body and his status as a general, under normal circumstances, he would be a proper femme fatale. That was if he did not have the two scars running through his face. The two scars extended from the right side of Botha's forehead all the way to his left chin. Botha's entire face was ruined. No one knew why Boris insisted on not wearing an eye patch when his right eye was already gone. Why didn't he think of wearing a mask when half of his nose was gone? Why did he refuse the treatment of the Church of Light when he could no longer open half of his mouth? Some people guessed that Bao Si wanted to use his face to establish his prestige in the army. It was indeed not without reason, because all the soldiers who saw his terrifying face kept quiet out of fear. Imperial order? Bowen paused for a moment. "It's indeed time. Nien Nien." The soldier raised his head in shock and looked at Boris. This imperial decree of the Divine Dragon Empire was not a true decree. It did not go through the other ministers. In fact, it was a personal letter from the emperor to his trusted aide, or rather, a secret decree. Logically speaking, Bose should have hurriedly taken it and immediately checked if the sealing wax was intact. Then, he would have found a place where no one was around to secretly look at it. How could he let a little soldier read in public like this? Bose looked at the soldier and said, "My eyes aren't good. Help me read it." When the soldier saw Bao Si looking at him, he quickly lowered his head and trembled as he opened the sealing wax. He did not want to break the rules, but it was indeed inconvenient for the general. Furthermore, he had worked hard and performed a great service. Furthermore, he had already said so much. There was nothing he could do about it. Even if the hero king was here, he would not blame him. The soldier comforted himself as he did something disgraceful, softly reading the emperor's personal letter. "Beloved General Bao Si, how have you been? You have been guarding Calm Wind Pass for many years and rarely return. This king, speak louder. My right ear isn't very good," Bao Si said with a smile. This smile nearly scared the soldier to tears. Although he had never heard of a general having an injured ear, the soldier still quickly read it out loud. "This king misses you very much. I also miss you very often. However, the country is very important. The safety of the common people depends on you. This is very important and cannot be easily touched. Therefore, that's enough," Bao Si said with a wave of his hand. The soldier immediately heaved a sigh of relief and wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. "Just tell me directly, how many dragon knights can His Majesty send over this year?" Bao Si said. "Oh." The soldier blinked his eyes and immediately began to quickly read through the letter. This matter concerned the rising tide, as well as the lives of all his brothers. At this time, he did not care about the rules. "What?" the soldier exclaimed as he suddenly raised his head to look at Bao Si. Then, he lowered his head and read the letter back and forth. It was as if he suspected that he had seen wrongly. "How many?" Bao Si asked again. General, 20. The soldier stammered as he handed the letter over with both hands. His meaning was that if the general did not believe him, he could read it himself. Of course, the general did not believe him. He did not believe that a soldier would dare to lie to him on this matter. Hearing this number, Bao Si, who had been as unmoving as a mountain, finally frowned his remaining thick eyebrow. A heavy pressure suddenly descended upon Calm Wind Mountain Pass like a storm. It startled a flock of birds that were resting in the area. 20. Fuck. Moreover, His Majesty also said in the letter that Lady Flay might not come this year. Don't worry about this. I received a message from Lady Flay a few days ago. She will come. Moreover, she will bring people from the Red Dragon sect with her. Red Dragon sect? But hasn't the Empire recently? I don't care about this or that. No matter who it is, as long as he is a human, as long as he can come to Calm Wind Pass and resist the rising tide with us. He is my brother. During the rising tide, humans should be united. No matter what, wait until the tide recedes and we leave Calm Wind Pass. Anyone who enters Calm Wind Pass can only die in the hands of the Water Tribe. I understand, General. Bao Si waved his hand and said, there are so few Dragon Knights this year. Moreover, His Majesty thinks that Lady Flay might not come. Thus, His Majesty will definitely give me an explanation. Otherwise, Calm Wind Pass would not be able to resist. Hearing this, the soldier hurriedly picked up the letter and read it from the end. General is wise. It is indeed written. His Majesty said that he will transfer 2 armies to us. Moreover, he has already issued a mission for the Empire in the Adventurers Guild. When the time comes, there will be a large number of adventurers to help us. After saying this, the soldier nervously looked at Bao Si. He did not care about how terrifying Bao Si's face was. He did not know how much help His Majesty would bring to Calm Wind Pass. But his instincts told him that it should not be too big as expected. Bao Si lightly shook his head. General, the soldier called out, it is useless no matter how many armies come. Bao Si said, because our Calm Wind Pass is not lacking in people. The soldiers of Calm Wind Pass have always had high status. As long as they can leave here alive, they will be looked upon favorably wherever they go. They will be seen as heroes. Thus, there are many people like you here. A young man who came to Calm Wind Pass to join the army on a whim. The soldier lowered his head shyly, as if he was reminiscing about his unbearable past. But even if we are not lacking in people, it is always good to have more people at this time. Although the walls of Calm Wind Pass are long, the top of the walls cannot hold more than 100,000 people. Then, General, you mean we will not be able to defend Calm Wind Pass this year? Nonsense. Bao Si raised his hand and slapped the soldier. We will definitely be able to defend it. The problem is... At this point, Boris suddenly stopped talking. Then, a clear voice rang out, helping him to finish his sentence. The problem is how many more people will die, right? The soldier stood up and saluted the person who had come. That person was wearing a plain long gown and holding a folding fan. He did not have any extra accessories on him, but just by standing there casually, a sense of grace and nobility spontaneously arose. No matter how one looked at him, he was not an ordinary person. Mr. Li, Lao Li, Bao Si also greeted him warmly, then casually waved his hand. That soldier immediately understood and ran away. Mr. Li looked at the back of that soldier and smiled at Bao Si. I did not expect that the mighty general of Calm Wind Pass, General Bao Si, would be able to converse with a small soldier for so long. You must be joking. Bao Si smiled and did not explain. General Bao Si, what's the situation this year? How many Dragon Knights can the Hero King send? Mr. Li asked. 20. Mr. Li's brows pricked up. Usually, 30 Dragon Knights would barely be enough. Bao Si frowned and looked at Mr. Li curiously. Mr. Li, you have been at Calm Wind Pass for less than a year. Why? At this point, Bose suddenly stopped because a gust of sea breeze suddenly slapped his face. Bao Si felt as though he had swallowed a gust of wind. Although it was not strong, it was very clear. The direction of the wind suddenly changed. Bao Si's eyes narrowed as he suddenly stood up. His calm temperament changed and became extremely sharp. Bao Si walked to the side of the city wall and held onto the battlements as he looked at the horizon. What's the matter? Mr. Li was also shocked by Bao Ci's sudden change as he asked nervously. Mr. Li, have the items from your Middle Empire arrived? Bao Ci asked. They have been prepared long ago. They're just waiting for General Bao Ci's orders, Mr. Li said. Thank you very much, Bao Ci said in a deep voice. That means... Mr. Li stared intently at Bao Ci. Look, Bao Ci raised his hand and pointed. As Mr. Li spoke, he looked in the direction Bao Ci was pointing. He saw a long silver line shining brightly as it suddenly appeared on the horizon. Mr. Li rubbed his eyes and took another look. There is clearly no such line just now. That is a monstrous wave, Bao Ci said. His voice sounded like a war horn. It made Mr. Li feel agitated for no reason. Chapter 215. That's a wave. Mr. Li turned to look, his eyes filled with disbelief. The silver line that appeared on the horizon was clearly still very far from here. If that was a wave, and one that could be seen from here, how big would the wave be? Is a high tide? Mr. Li turned to ask. Yes. Bao's eyes shone with a cold light as he shouted. Alert! Dong! 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 As Bao's voice fell, the sound of war drums echoed throughout Calm Wind Pass. The powerful sound caused the ground to tremble. It was as if the drums were knocking on the hearts of all the soldiers. This was the highest alert of Calm Wind Pass. The atmosphere of the entire Ping Fong Mountain Pass suddenly changed from tranquil to stormy. It was like a person taking a stroll by the river, suddenly running. Countless soldiers quickly tidied up their armor and rushed up the city walls in an orderly manner. Huge energy cannons poked out from the city walls and set up in the middle of the city walls. The mouths of the cannons emitted a chilling aura. These were the weapons and mechanisms made by the dwarves. Quickly inform His Majesty and have the Dragon Knights come immediately, Bao said. Yes, General. Bring up all the things we've prepared and greet those beasts. Yes, General. Mr. Li? Don't worry, General. Mr. Li hurried down Calm Wind Pass after saying that although this had happened suddenly, the people in Calm Wind Pass did not panic at all. Instead, they seemed to be following the prescribed order and carrying out their duties casually. This was, of course, because the high tide would come every year. It was not a surprise at all. Moreover, they had prepared for this high tide for an entire year. The only unexpected thing was that the high tide this time came too quickly, much earlier than the previous years. As Bose thought, he kept his eyes on the silver thread. In this short period of time, the originally thin thread had become much thicker in his eyes. This meant that the huge wave was rushing towards him at an astonishing speed. If it were not for the fact that they had spent a lot of money to hire the dwarves to build this city wall, just this huge wave alone would have caused the humans to suffer heavy losses. He could now see the countless Xiaohei dots on the white line. They were the flying fish tribe, and they could ride the waves to fly for a short period of time. It was the greatest threat to Calm Wind Pass. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew from behind Bose. Bose didn't even need to turn his head to know that his own Dragon Knight had been dispatched. 20 Dragon Knights lined up in a row and shot toward the flying fishmen like 20 arrows. For some reason, as long as there was a wyvern in the sky, no oceanic race dared to leave the water. The Flying Fish Clan was no exception. Watching the black dots fall into the water, Boss nodded. It seemed that 20 Dragon Knights were barely enough. If the Flying Fish Clan were allowed to fly close to the Calm Wind Pass, it would be troublesome. Suddenly, a deafening noise rang out, followed by earth-shaking cheers. A shadow that blotted out the sky enveloped Boris. Bose raised his head and looked at him. His lips, which were only partially able to move, moved as if he was smiling in the sky, for 5 huge ships slowly flew past Calm Wind Pass, bringing with them a suffocating aura. They hovered above the sea in front of Calm Wind Pass. The Middle Empire's golden spaceships. 1 Dragon-grade spaceship for Tiger-grade spaceships. Looking at those huge spaceships, Boris sighed with emotion. If the Hero King had any other means, he probably wouldn't have allowed the Middle Empire spaceships to fly past his territory. Had the Divine Dragon Empire really reached such a precarious state? The Middle Empire's spaceships? Suddenly, a pleasant female voice rang out beside Boris's ear. Bose couldn't help but smile again. In the entire continent, there were only 2 or 3 women who could silently appear by his side without him noticing. Naturally, there was only one who could come at this time. Lady Flay. Boris turned around and cupped his fists respectfully. Legendary experts had noble statuses, regardless of faction or region. General Boris. Flay nodded her head and bowed slightly. It could be considered a serious return of the greeting. With Flay's status, she didn't even need to bow when facing the human emperor. However, Boris was different. He had worked hard and made great contributions, guarding Calm Wind Pass for more than 20 years. It was worth it. Lady Flay, why did you come at such a coincidence? Boris asked. However, I feel much more at ease now that you are here. What coincidence? Flay rolled her eyes after returning the greeting. I have been here for several days. I see. Boris nodded. As expected of a legendary expert, Lady Flay. You are so righteous. His Majesty thought that you wouldn't come this year. Humph. The Divine Dragon Empire is still his for now. However, Calm Wind Pass isn't. This is the defense line of all humans, Flay said. Boris agreed. Just as he was about to say something, a voice suddenly rang out and spoke before him. This person, could he be? Mr. Lee walked up from the city wall and saw Flay at a glance. Flay looked at Boris, as if to say, Who is this? Lady Flay, this is Mr. Lee, Boris introduced. Those spaceships were brought by Mr. Leo. Flay blinked her bright eyes and looked at Mr. Lee. No. Mr. Lee waved his hand. How could I dare to call myself Mr. in front of a legendary expert? I am just an insignificant person, not worth mentioning. I am Li Gui of the Middle Empire. Li Gui. Flay was stunned. The first prince of the Middle Empire? Li Gui laughed in self-mockery. Ever since my rebellious third brother successfully usurped the throne over a year ago, I am no longer the first prince. Oh, right? The new emperor of the Middle Empire ascended the throne. I forgot about that, Flay said. Then, why are you here? You can't stay in the Middle Empire anymore. So you brought your family's wealth and surrendered to the Divine Dragon Empire? Lady Flay, you must be joking. Anger flashed in Li Gui's eyes. Even if I am not talented, I am still a descendant of the Li family. How can I be so unbearable? I came here under the orders of the Golden King of the Middle Empire. Your emperor is quite relaxed. He actually dares to let you run around with such a powerful force. Isn't he afraid of any trouble? Flay said, finding it strange. Li Gui gently shook his head, not explaining. Even though Li Gui did not explain, Flay seemed to understand. She muttered, that's true. After all, Gai Mingyue is his uncle. He should be confident. Boris, who had been listening to the two at the side, suddenly said, it's starting. The two paused for a moment. Immediately after, a few loud and clear dragon roars passed through the distant surface of the sea and slowly traveled over. 2 days later, news of the high tide coming early spread throughout the Divine Dragon Empire. The empire was in an uproar. However, that was all. The high tide would always come. This year, it was just that it came early. This was within his expectations. Naturally, Hidden Shadow also received this news. Hence, he started to make preparations to take over Ruiyun City. Every time Hidden Shadow thought about how difficult it was to persuade those Red Dragon followers to take advantage of the situation, he could not help shaking his head and sighing. However, Hidden Shadow could understand. The Divine Dragon Empire's people placed great importance on the high tide. Almost everyone was of one mind. Even if Hidden Shadow could not help, he should not cause trouble. This was a common sense among the Divine Dragon Empire's people. However, Hidden Shadow told the Red Dragon Empire's people to cause trouble while those heroes and warriors were risking their lives to kill the enemy. Hidden Shadow's actions did not seem appropriate. The Red Dragon Empire's people felt bad about it. It was natural that they could not accept it. This was like Hidden Shadow instigating people who had lived in the forest for generations to set fire to a mountain. It was already very good that the Red Dragon Empire's people did not fall out with him on the spot. However, as the saying went, one had no choice in the world. Hidden Shadow's actions were forced by the situation. Hidden Shadow nodded, feeling that his thoughts were correct. What's wrong? Lacey asked when he saw Shadow, nodding his head repeatedly. Huh? Hidden Shadow recovered his wits. Nothing. How are the arrangements in Rueyun City? Everything is in place. After Lacey said that, he looked at Hidden Shadow with a hesitant expression. What's wrong? Hidden Shadow asked unhappily. Are you sure you want to do this? Lacey asked. If we are not careful, we might become despicable people that everyone condemns. Huh? If you want to scold me, you don't have to beat around the bush. Hidden Shadow smiled. However, when I was in the Middle Empire, I always heard this phrase. It's called the winner takes all. Chapter 216. Lacey looked at Dark Shadow with a complicated expression. It was as if he was looking at a piece of trash. It was also as if he was looking at a good youth slowly falling into the abyss. He was also very puzzled in his heart. It had clearly only been a short year. How could a person change so much? Are you sure? Lacey asked after thinking for a moment. What? Dark Shadow was still studying the map of Auspicious Cloud City. It looked very serious and did not even look up. From time to time, he would use a red pen to draw red circles on the map. If you really succeed and kill a Dragon Knight now, it will be a huge blow to the soldiers of Calm Wind Pass who are fighting against the rising tide. Isn't that a little too despicable? Again, Dark Shadow looked at Lacey. I've heard this many times over the past few days. Can you stop looking at me with such an innocent and wronged expression? It makes me feel like I'm forcing a good girl into prostitution. Scram, Lacey said angrily. Can't you wait until the rising tide? No, this is a great opportunity. If we don't take this opportunity, the risk is too great. The losses outweigh the gains. Do you have to be like this? Yes. Are you still human? Of course. Then why can't I see where your bottom line is? Someone told me that most of the time, people compete to see who has the lowest bottom line. That's why there's a saying that a successful person doesn't care about trifles. Who told you that? It's someone without a bottom line. If we use such unscrupulous methods to obtain victory, then what's the difference between us and the nobles of the Divine Dragon Empire? There's a big difference. At the very least, we won't kill the innocent. What if the Dragon Knights are innocent? How is that possible? Then have you thought about how many brave soldiers of Calm Wind Pass will die for nothing if one Dragon Knight dies? Dark Shadow fell silent for a moment before saying, We must obtain Auspicious Cloud City. However, we can't defeat the Dragon Knights, so we can only do this. You're starting to not care about anything. You're crazy. Nonsense. When I once saw the Empire's army kill a little girl who just turned 10 years old with their spears. If you're human, you won't be indifferent. You'll go crazy. Dark Shadow's voice was bone-chilling like a cold blade. Then those warriors, soldiers dying in battle for the common people, can be considered to have died a worthy death. But didn't you also rush out at that time and behead the assailant on the spot? Reyes was talking about the battle that made Shadow famous. I don't care. Hidden Shadow suddenly roared hysterically. His eyes instantly turned red. Even if this old man has to resort to unscrupulous means, even if I have to burn in karmic flames every day after I die, I will overthrow the Divine Dragon Empire. No one can F*King stop me. F*CKU. Lacey looked at Shadow and choked with sobs. He was speechless, but more than that, he was shocked. Yu Ing was venting his anger alone. He said that he wanted to overthrow the Divine Dragon Empire. He made a solemn vow. It was as if there was a flame called madness burning from his body. Black smoke billowed out and pervaded the air. For those who did not understand Shadow, they would definitely think that this person was crazy. However, Lacey vaguely felt that there was a chance that Shadow would succeed. This person was too mysterious. The way he spoke was like someone from the Middle Empire, but deep down, his behavior was more like someone from the Saimai Empire, being burned in karmic flames after death. This was what the Saimai Empire called karma. As for people from the Middle Empire, they were usually killed in karma. However, no matter what, it seemed that it was impossible to persuade Shadow to change his mind. 2 days later, Auspicious Cloud City, since there were over a dozen red-robed men standing behind Shadow, he felt very confident and looked at Geraint calmly. City Lord, it has been a few days since we last met. How have you been? Shadow shouted loudly. Shadow, I didn't expect you to dare to appear in front of me, Geraint said with a frown. Are you here to die? Shadow laughed and said, Haha, City Lord must be joking. I am here to take over auspicious Cloud City. If City Lord is willing to hand over the City Lord token, then you and I will naturally be at peace. Otherwise, with a dozen or so people behind you, Geraint shouted angrily, Ha! You overestimate yourself. City Lord, what are you talking about? Shadow asked strangely. You don't think my Red Dragon Church will attack the city like your army, do you? As soon as Shadow's voice fell, a chaotic noise sounded, followed by a few loud explosions. Then, flames soared into the sky. Geraint was startled. His eyes flashed, and he suddenly turned around and looked toward the city. He saw that more than one place in the city had suddenly burst into flames. It seemed that even if the people of the Red Dragon Church were worried about the country and the people, they still believed in Jilin's religion. This fire was set very cleanly and efficiently. You, Geraint angrily pointed at Shadow. You are courting death. Kill him for me. The ballista on auspicious Cloud City rumbled. Countless shells were as dense as raindrops. The explosions were endless, and the earth shook. The flames covered everything on the ground, and nothing could be seen clearly. The artillery fire continued until Geraint felt that it was about time. When Shadow should have turned into ashes, he raised his hand. The artillery fire slowly stopped. The smoke and dust slowly dissipated, but the ground in front of auspicious Cloud City was empty. There was not even a trace of blood. Where is he? Why is he gone? The soldiers' puzzled voices sounded one after another. Geraint frowned, thinking that it was not that simple. Based on Shadow's reputation, he could determine that this was not a person who could fight head-on. City Lord? Put out the fire first. Yes. Geraint hurried down the city wall with his men. As for why Shadow suddenly disappeared, he didn't want to delve into this matter. That person could even take out a teleportation array, so some small illusions should not be a problem. When he arrived in the city, Geraint realized that things were not simple. The Red Dragon Church was worthy of being a cult that always clamored to purify the world with holy fire. This fire was ruthless and accurate, and it was all at the vital points, and the fire was extremely fierce. City Lord, many places are on fire at the same time. We don't have enough manpower. A soldier shouted. Where are the fires? Geraint asked. They are all important buildings in auspicious Cloud City. Are there any houses on fire? None. Not a single one. None. It seems that these people are plotting something. Pass down my order. All personnel, spread out to put out the fire. At the same time, call on the people to put out the fire together. Those who participate in putting out the fire will be heavily rewarded. Those who take advantage of the chaos will be severely punished. Yes. In fact, there was no need for Geraint to say anything. When people found out that there was a fire near their house, they had already shouted, Fire! Put out the fire! They ran around with buckets and basins. In the face of fire, humans would always unite. This was because everyone knew that the fire would spread. City Lord, why are you standing down there? Come up and have a cup of tea? Suddenly, a voice sounded from above Geraint's head. Geraint looked up. Shadow stretched out half of his body and waved at him enthusiastically. Geraint looked around. There was no one around. The soldiers had been sent out by him to put out the fire. Shadow. Geraint put his hands in his arms and strode upstairs. He walked to Shadow and sat down heavily. It wasn't that he didn't think of directly killing Shadow on the spot. It was just that there were still 4 or 5 red-robed people standing behind him. City Lord, I didn't expect you to dare to come up. You are indeed a hero, Shadow said with a smile. Look at the fire set by my Red Dragon Church. Is it beautiful? Evil cult demon. Geraint took out a black square iron plate and slapped it on the table. The iron plate was dark and looked ordinary. However, the words Auspicious Cloud were engraved on the front of the plate with golden lines. Auspicious Cloud City Lord Token. Shadow saw that the target of this trip was suddenly close. For a moment, he didn't know what Geraint was doing and was stunned. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.